Chapter 79, I've got you in my sight. In the noble family's camp, Child Yunhee's defeat caused an uproar amongst all the people. No one had expected that as one of the three childs and as a man whose bloodline was from Western God's domain and had superhuman strength, Child Si Nien would be defeated in the first round of Sword Palace's entrance test. He was at the third rank. He was a third-rank swordsman. Even amongst all the third-rank swordsmen, he was at the top level. If he said that his physical strength was the number 2 amongst all the candidates, then nobody would dare say that he or she was the number 1. Three childs wasn't just a false reputation. They won this honor through their actual battle record. However, what did they see? One sword. Yunshi just brandished his sword once, then Child Si Nien had been defeated. It was so easy but incomprehensible. Many people hadn't even seen what had happened. Child Si Nien had been teleported away by the twin witches. The 3 bloody wounds on his back claimed his failure. As two people who had clearly witnessed what happened, Child Yunhee and Child San Quan were dumbfounded. Everything had just happened in 1 second. If one divided that 1 second into 10 parts, then in the first 3 parts, Child Si Nien was gathering his strength, preparing to use his strongest leap attack. The 4th and 5th part were the mysterious black-haired maid's turn. In the face of Child Si Nien's attack, she also jumped up. The next 1/10 of a second was the most important part. Including Child San Quan and Child Yunhee, no one understood how she could have done that. She didn't directly block Child Si Nien's slash, but somersaulted in the air, then brandished her sword. She brandished her sword so nimbly and untraceably as if she had a pair of wings on her back. She just jumped up, somersaulted in the air, and brandished her sword, then she had won the battle. It looked like her speed was suddenly accelerated 10 times. She seemed to not be in the same spacetime as Child Si Nien. From the 7th part to the 10th part, everything had become meaningless, because Child Si Nien had been defeated. Strange. That was too strange. Child San Quan frowned. She had such wonderful sword skill and such nimble body movement. How could she be a civilian? No civilians would have the chance to learn such a fantastic sword skill. Where is that made from? Child Yun, he was annoyed. As a local person, he had never heard about this maid who suddenly appeared. That was too bad. Should I use them? Child Yun, he glanced at his crane-winged twin swords with an irresolute look. The twin swords were his trump card. He had the confidence to use them to defeat any third-rank swordsman. However, if he used them, he was afraid that his score in the eyes of the twin witches would reduce. After all, the twin swords weren't his own strength. Yunhee, it looks like we should get serious, Child San Quan said as he waved his fan sword. His eyes were sharp like a viper that was staring at its prey. It's time to show these civilians the true power of our noble families. Oh, Child Si Nien was really unlucky. I know that his sword has some hidden abilities, Child Yunhee sighed. They were noble family's children. They had more means than their own strength. Unfortunately, Child Si Nien underestimated his opponent too much. Before he could use his hidden abilities, he had been defeated. When you needed them, you should decisively use them. Why were hidden abilities called trump cards? Because you could use them at the crucial moment to turn the tide of battle. After walking off the stage, the girls greeted Yunshi with cheers. May, good job. You're the strongest. Your lucky charm is really effective. Oh my god, he is Child Si Nien. Although he is a little stupid, but his strength is really strong. May, you're so awesome. A second-rank female swordsman defeated a third-rank swordsman. This was the first time I saw that. May, you surely can join the Sword Palace. Thanks to your black hair, I feel that I suddenly have a deeper knowledge about sword skills. Yes, me too. And I thought that I suddenly became strong, so that wasn't my illusion. The girls smiled and twittered like a flock of swallows. They almost started to dance around Yunxi. However, Yunxi looked a little confused. Why was Child Xi Nian in the real world weaker than the Child Xi Nian in the Star Trial? He used that attack without any thoughts. Did he look down on me? Besides, shouldn't there be another strong person? Yunxi remembered that terrible archer in red, who had killed him dozens of times in the trial and almost made him doubt his own ability. Wasn't the archer in red a candidate of the Sword Palace's entrance test? Yunxi was lost in thought. He didn't notice that the relations amongst the girls and himself had become better, the threads amongst them also became more solid. Damn it! I haven't even used my true ability. Child Xi Nian quickly recovered. He punched the ground angrily, with his eyes filled with tears. How could he expect that the black-haired maid's attack would have been so unpredictable? And why did you know my leap attack so well? Child Xi Nian had a feeling that the maid had seen through his every single attack. What the hell was all that about? On the hilltop, about 3 kilometers away from the exam area, under a tree, a white-haired person in red watched the exam area. The person slowly raised a black bow, aiming at something. C*** K-a-doodle-doo. A white pigeon flew towards the archer in red from a distance and landed on the person's ragged cape. There was a roll of white paper on one of the pigeon's legs, a letter. Act according to our plan. Wait for the sign. If you think it's necessary, you can act autonomously. Still aim at the same target. The archer in red nodded, then casually tore the letter to shreds. Sniff. Sniff. Some strange wheezing came from under the archer's feet. If one took a good look at the ground under the archer's feet, one would find that it was abnormally dark red, like some big monster's scales. C*** K-a-doodle-doo. The pigeon spread its wings, flying to the sky again. Still, have to wait for a while. The archer in red's voice sounded hoarse like his throat had been burnt. The archer in red raised his long bow again. By using his eagle eye, he observed the test. The target his eagle eye locked on was on the Sword Palace's platform, the location where the twin witches were. Chapter 80, Victory. Victory. On the stage, the second round of the Sword Palace's entrance test had began. Victory, victory, and victory. Cheer up. I will win. Oh gosh, I really won. After obtaining Yunxi seeds, the female swordsmen defeated their opponents like splitting bamboo. At first, the noble family's children and civilian swordsmen were dismissive of the powers of these female swordsmen. But now, they knew that they were very wrong. Almost all the female swordsmen had entered the third round. Only 2 female swordsmen were defeated by Child Sanquan and Child Yunhe, the 2 strongest men amongst all the male swordsmen. Apart from this, 3 female swordsmen had also been defeated because their opponents were also female swordsmen who had obtained Yunxi seeds. Even the female swordsmen themselves couldn't believe their successive victories. Before the test began, they had estimated in their hearts. Only a few female swordsmen had had the confidence to enter the third round. As for other people, they could only pray for their luck. However, the record they had achieved now was so incredible. Even they themselves felt that it was unbelievable. Their hearts were filled with excitement and joy. Even the 5 female swordsmen who had failed were also pleased for their own improvements. Without any previous arrangement, they all paid their attention to the mysterious black-haired girl, Mei. Even though Yunxi thought that what he did was undetectable, but the instincts of the female swordsman told them that Mei was the initiator. The tale was true. The strongest female swordsman. The girl who had the most beautiful black hair. The people who obtained that girl's black hair would obtain luck. Is this an illusion? Why do I feel that everyone's eyes are so weird? Yunshi thought in his heart. He had a strong feeling that the threads between him and the girls were becoming solid. The invisible threads were sending the girls' experience and understanding about sword skills to him. It was even faster than Yunshi's expectation. He had began to receive their seeds' feedback. Child Si Nian's failure wasn't an accident because what defeated him was Yunshi's flying swallow sword. He hadn't completely mastered his flying swallow sword in the trial, but now, he was able to use it perfectly. The nimble, flying swallow-like attack was called the Swallow Returns. It was more terrible than flying swallow triple attack and could let Yunshi turn around and brandish his sword in the air. At the very moment Yunshi jumped up, he had performed a quicksilver motion. By using his body's compatibility and flexibility to the limit, he turned around in the air. This was the principle of the Swallow Returns. At that instant, Yunshi overcame the rules of gravity, turning himself into a flying swallow, then beat Child Si Nian down with one brandish. The Swallow Returns was the strongest skill Yunshi had learned after he practiced flying swallow sword to the limit. Visually, it almost broke the limits of the human body structure. In the mortal rank, if you could use it, it also meant that you had almost been in an unassailable position. This was the power of flying swallow sword, perfect version. Yunshi had learnt the Swallow Returns, which also meant that he had combined quicksilver motion and flying swallow sword together perfectly. He was only a step away from being able to learn Sky Flying Sword. The reason why he had reached this level so fast was due to the female swordsmen. Their experience and understanding about sword skills helped him a lot. Although the small town was so unknown that it wasn't even marked on any maps, however, the girls had still come from a long distance to take part in the test. In this, none of them were weak. Although none of them had reached the second rank, but that was due to their physical quality. When it came to talent, many of the female swordsmen weren't inferior to the noble family's children. Maybe a girl's experience and understanding about sword skills could only help Yunshi a bit. However, there were 37 female swordsmen. A change in quantity lead to change in quality. Finally, their experiences helped Yunshi open the door to the perfect version of flying swallow sword. Especially the first girl who had obtained his hair, Xiao Chao. Her special willpower and resilience were crucial to Yunshi's success. Her experience helped Yunshi remedy his last weakness, willpower. After wandering between death and life so many times, Yunshi had understood flying swallow sword very well, and Hua Hua's seed let him learn it easily. However, Yunshi still lacked the most basic sword skill experience. In his limit practice, he had brandished his sword over 100,000 times in a short time in order to increase his experience of basic sword training. However, Xiao Chao didn't have the same experience as Yunshi. She had learned her sword skill from the most basic part, bit by bit. She hadn't had the help of Green Hippo's blood seed like Yunshi. With her own willpower, she had practiced the most basic sword skill countless times, which was far beyond ordinary people's imagination. Her persevering, state sword skill style was mastered after brandishing her sword over 1,000,000 times. Similarly, other female swordsmen had also practiced the basic sword skills very diligently. The reason why they were still at the first rank was only because their physical qualities hadn't met the requirement to become a second-rank swordsman. However, Yunshi had learned his sword skills from actual battles. He was lacking theoretical knowledge. Their experiences of basic sword skills covered this shortage. Mei, it's your turn. Your opponent is Child Snake Bones. Cheer up, you can defeat him. Humph, he is just a second-rank swordsman, how can he defeat Mei? Don't worry too much. Child Snake Bones. He was really an old acquaintance. Yunshi took a light breath, then held the sword in his hand. He still remembered that Child Snake Bones was the strongest person in the Stone Soldier army and the person who had killed him countless times in the first district of the formal trial. "We meet again," Yunshi stepped on the stage, then smiled to Child Snake Bones. "Again? Have we met before?" Child Snake Bones held his sword and looked at Yunshi with a serious look, as if he was confronting a formidable enemy. "Well, yes. You were really enthusiastic at that time," Yunshi raised his sword. To be exact, Child Snake Bones had killed him many times. His Snake Bones spirit sword was the first spirit weapon Yunshi had obtained. Large drops of sweat were dropping down from Child Snake Bones' forehead. Why? They both were at the second rank. Besides, his weapon and physical strength were obviously better than the mysterious black-haired maid. However, when he looked at the maid, he felt that he was looking at a nightmare. "No. I can't go on like this. I should strike first to gain the initiative." Child Snake Bones moved. His Snake Bones soft sword turned into a freaky shadow snake, twisting its body and biting towards Yunshi. However, Yunshi only felt a little nostalgic. How many times had I been killed by that? Yunshi thought in his heart. Yunshi's step was as weird as the Snake Bones' soft sword. He whipped his sword like a whip, swaying the Snake Bones' soft sword away. Everything was so natural. Snake Bones' soft sword had a special ability to confuse its enemy's visual sense and positional sense. However, it had no effect on Yunshi. Till Yunshi's sword stabbed into his heart, Child Snake Bones still refused to believe that his unique skill had been broken. "Why did you know that place?" "That was the only weakness in my attack. Because I had been killed by that attack over 100 times. Yunshi answered in his heart. Chapter 81, Instant Kill. After the end of the second round, everyone surprisingly found out that there were nearly 30 female swordsmen entering the third round. In the past, they were like some ornaments in other people's eyes. No one had expected that they could seize nearly 30% of the quota. That's just bullshit. Impossible. Impossible. Someone come tell me that this isn't real. When did the female swordsmen of White Lotus Sword Domain have such brilliant sword skills? If the result of the first round could be regarded as a coincidence, now, 2 rounds had finished and about 30% of the victors were female swordsmen. No one believed that it was a realistic result. According to the past record, most of these female swordsmen shouldn't even pass through the first round of the entrance test. After 2 rounds, there should only be a few female swordsmen still remaining on the stage. If it wasn't because White Lotus Sword Palace often intentionally recruited a few girls to balance the sex ratio of new disciples, it wouldn't be surprising to discover that none of the female swordsmen had passed through to the second round. In the mortal rank, males had greater advantages in physical quality over females. Only until the hero rank would this situation would start to change. Humph. Don't look down upon us. We're not weak. Besides, our lucky goddess is blessing us. Several vivacious female swordsmen made faces at the male swordsman camps. However, their youthful faces also looked a little confused. It seemed that this test was really different from the past. They were all hard-working female swordsmen. They could easily feel the difference when they brandished their swords. Their physical qualities had not been strengthened. However, when they stood on the exam area, they would naturally enter an excitable state. In this state, their steps would become more nimble and their speed of brandishing their swords would also become faster. The most important thing was their fantastic prejudgment ability. They felt that they could see through their opponent's moves before their opponent started moving. For the first time, battles became so easy for them. They even began to enjoy the process. They felt as if their swords suddenly had souls. These were the only words they could find to describe their changes. Due to that, their mediocre sword skills had a sudden but massive change. We've really become strong. I also feel like that. It's not your illusion. I felt that I suddenly understood many things. It must be the effect of May's lucky charm. Thank God. The girls were immersed in the joy of becoming strong and peeped at May from time to time. The more frequently they looked at the mysterious black-haired girl, the more active and vibrant the seeds in their hearts would be. They felt that something was growing in their hearts, waiting for the right time to break through the soil. May, Xiao Chao offered Yunxi the most basic sword skill experience and had the strongest bond with Yunxi. Her behavior was most obvious. She had brandished her sword over 1,000,000 times. Even if she faced death, she had the confidence that her hands wouldn't shake. But now, she crossed her two hands together with a shy look. Only my quicksilver motion hasn't reached perfection. Yunxi didn't realize that the girls were looking at him enthusiastically and shyly. He was focusing on continuing to improve his sword skill. His flying swallow sword had reached its perfect version. If his quicksilver motion also reached perfection, he would be able to practice Hua's most terrible sword skill, Sky Flying Sword, 10% version. Yunxi had been looking forward to practicing this godlike sword skill from a long time ago. Even though he could only learn its 10% version, that was still enough for him to be invincible amongst mortal-rank people. Soon afterwards, the Sword Master's voice came from the Sword Palace's platform. The third round begins. Number 11 vs number 36. Number 47 versus number 35. The girls came back to Earth from the joy of passing through the second round. Now, they stepped onto the stage again. However, their eyes looked more confident. Their steps had become more light. Every girl secretly took a glance at Yunxi before they stepped on the stage, then their eyes brightened up with confidence. I can win. I must win. Because we are blessed. After that, they crushed all their opponents. At first, the people still felt surprised and their bodies shivered. Finally, they became callous, with their bodies stiff like wood and their mouths opened wide. They witnessed the girls defeating one male swordsman after another with their own eyes. Amongst the first-rank swordsmen, no one was match for them. Even these second-rank male geniuses were also defeated. Their failures were so fast and unexpected, which even made them start to wonder about the meaning of their lives. Child Yunhe was the only one who still remained as the last honor of noble family's camp. His Yunhe sword skill was so exceptional that he blocked his opponent's every attack and successfully passed through the third round. At the end of the third round, Yunxi met another old acquaintance. Child San Quan, the strongest in personal strength amongst the three childs. He had 3 careers, a swordsman, Taoist priest, and alchemist at the same time, and had the spirit weapon, 5 animals fan sword. I know you're the initiator. You caused this whole change. What did you do? Child San Quan waved his fan sword, staring at Yunxi. Especially Yunxi's chest and his flawless black hair. After that, he looked down at Yunxi's feet and his exotic black dress. Well. Very well. I haven't seen such a high-quality maid for a long time. Do you want to come and swear loyalty to me? Who do you think you are? Yunxi looked at him with disdain. Amongst the 3 childs, you're the most cunning and frivolous person. In the trial, you always look down upon other people. If Hua didn't remind him, Yunxi would think that Child San Quan was the hidden boss amongst the 3 childs. But in battle, he was actually impressive to the eye but of no use. No matter if it was the mysterious archer in red or Child Yunhe, they were actually stronger than Child San Quan. Only Child Si Nian wasn't likely to defeat him very easily, because Child Si Nian was too honest and didn't know how to deal with tricks. The best way to defeat Child San Quan was to beat him down before he used any underhand tricks. Shuffle. Yun Su used Quicksilver motion to increase his speed. His running was graceful like sheep on the prairie, making him instantly cross dozens of meters. Well, it may not a bad idea. Let me play with you for a while. You will soon understand the true power of our noble families. Child San Quan waved his fan sword and started to deploy some stuff on the exam area. The next second, he saw a flying swallow. Chapter 82. Air Battle. Sword skill. Mortals had no idea about what an air battle was. Humans weren't birds. They didn't have wings. Even if a mortal rank person had strong muscles like Child Xin Yan, after gathering all their strength, that person would only be able to jump a few meters. The hang time was so short that the person could only do a few things within that period of time, for instance, launching a leap attack. Therefore, as long as a person was still a mortal, no matter what that person's career was, swordsman, alchemist, Taoist priest, mage or knight, that person wasn't likely to know a lot about air battles. However, amongst all the mortal rank skills, Flying Swallow's sword was one of the few skills that could let its user launch an attack from the air. Of course, one could do that only after they could use their Flying Swallow sword perfectly in Quicksilver motion skillfully. Yunshi had met both requirements, in which case, he could temporarily get rid of the weight and restrictions, turning into a swallow and flying to the sky. Therefore, when Child San Quan still secretly dropped his little tricks onto the exam area, he suddenly saw Yunshi jumping up into the air and avoiding all the traps. His mind went blank. This wasn't what he had expected. In order to defeat this unknown black-haired maid, he had tried his best. After stepping onto the stage, he had begun to place traps around the exam area by using some sneaky methods. However, even though he had 3 careers, Taoist priest, alchemist, and swordsman at the same time, he hadn't expected that a mortal rank person could have such amazing bodily movement and nimble flying aptitude. The world seemed to have slowed down at that moment. No. Child San Quan could think 3 times faster than ordinary people. He tried his best to activate all the traps. One transparent thread after another bounced up from the ground. If Yunshi had rushed into that area, he would have faced inevitable death. These threads extended from the 5 animals' fan sword. They were pretty sharp, such that they could easily slice a green hippo to pieces. However, Yunshi wasn't rushing to him from the ground, but flying to him from the sky. The only place the traps didn't cover was where Child San Quan stood. Shuffle. That was the sound of wind, but also the sound of a sword. See. Faintly, Child San Quan heard the splashing sound of his blood, then he fainted. All the people around the exam area fell silent. Paw. 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 These people suddenly heard applause coming from the Sword Palace's platform. How long had it been since the Flying Swallow sword was invented by that peerless sword master? Since that time, only a few mortal people could use it. Yunshi became a swallow and flew through the air. When he did, killing his enemy was as easy as picking his own pocket. Actually, that was just an illusion, as he never was a swallow. Due to his powerful leaping ability, body control, and his slender, nimble physique, others would only perceive him as such. At the mortal rank, only a few sword skills could let the user fly in the air. Many people had practiced this sword skill, however, none of them had achieved success. Many people thought that this sword skill should not be listed in the mortal rank sword skills list. People should wait till they reached hero rank, then begin to practice air battle sword skills. However, Yunshi's The Swallow Returns clearly told them that they didn't need to wait till they had achieved the hero rank. They didn't even need to reach the 3rd rank. Reaching the 2nd rank was already enough, because Flying Swallow Sword was a sword skill for mortals. Any person could learn it after they practiced their sword skills to the limit. When the sword master created this sword skill, he hadn't reached the hero rank yet. Fly Swallow Sword was undoubtedly a mortal rank sword skill. It was a key leading to a higher realm. I was defeated. What's wrong with that maid? Since she has mastered such a wonderful sword skill, she can directly apply for admission. Why did she come to participate in the entrance test? Child San Quan couldn't accept the truth that he had been defeated. Because his throat had been sliced by Yun Shi's sword, he covered his throat with his hands and frantically shouted. Many people agreed with Child San Quan's words. Even several Sword Palace sword skill teachers also nodded. They were sword skill teachers. They knew that in order to perform the Swallow Returns as a second-rank person, the user must have amazing body flexibility and great sword talent. He is right. The maid can use the Swallow Returns. Her talent is worthy of admission. Perhaps her talent is only slightly inferior to that specially enrolled girl, Hua Hua. On the Sword Palace's platform, Red Lotus smiled, then wrote down the black-haired maid's name on the admission list. This meant that Yun Shi had passed through the entrance test. Red Lotus thought that Yun Shi had showed enough talent, so she didn't need to prove herself by participating in the next knockout round. After hesitating for a while, Red Lotus added a new name on the admission list, Xiao Chao's name. Her results were the best amongst all the girls who had obtained Yun Shi's seed. Strange. That's too fast. Hua Hua of course knew Yun Shi's exact details, but now, Yun Shi's achievements made her feel confused. A week ago, Yun Shi hadn't even mastered the Quicksilver motion steps and had just learned how to breathe in the right way. Why was he even able to use the perfect version of the Swallow Returns? What was the talent Yun Shi had awakened? Besides, when Hua Hua looked at the girls around Yun Shi, her heart kept warning her that something was wrong. Her special ability as Yun Shi's childhood sweetheart launched, Jealousy Radar. Shuffle. 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 Numerous red points appeared in Hua Hua's mind, which really scared her. Was something wrong with her jealousy radar? Why did she think that every girl around Yun Shi was her love rival? In their eyes, Yun Shi should be a black-haired maid named Mei. Why was it that when they looked at Yun Shi their sights were so fervent? Their faces blushed, their mouths were moist, and their expressions made them look like some shy little rabbits. Everything just showed that they were a group of girls in love. Yun Shi, what did you do to them? Or on the contrary, did they do something to you? Who could tell her that what had happened between the girls and Yun Shi when she had gone to meet the twin witches? No. I can't lose. I'm the strongest. After seeing Child San Quan's defeat, Child Yun he finally made a decision. You can fly. No, that can't be real. The maid should be only able to temporarily stop in the air. What she used are still mortal rank skills. However, I have the crane wing twin swords. They are hero rank weapons that are beyond everyone's imagination. How could ordinary people know the true power of crane wings twin swords? I, Child Yun He, will be the last winner. When my crane wings twin swords fly to the sky, it will be the time of your death. Chapter 83, Huayu. The penultimate round of Sword Palace's entrance test started. There were over 300 candidates taking the test. No one had expected that after several rounds of tests, 3 of the final 4 people would be female swordsmen. The male civilians' camp had been completely annihilated. Over 20 female swordsmen entered the list of top 36. In the quarter-final, the girls had defeated almost all the male swordsmen, except Child Yun He. In fact, there was another male. Unprecedentedly, 7 female swordsmen entered the list of the top 8. As for the noble family's camp, only Child Yun He was still active in the test. Almost all the noble families turned to support him, placing all their hopes and honor to the only surviving third-ranked child. After several rounds of internal battles, 2 female swordsmen stood on the exam area. The first girl was Xiao Chao, a civilian. She had obtained Yunxi's blessing and had a solid sword skill foundation. The second girl was Hua Yu, an aristocratic miss. She had also obtained Yunxi's blessing and was good at a gorgeous Western God's domain sword skill named Crossed Sword. The 2 girls' sword skill styles were completely different. Xiao Chao was good at basic sword skills, which was even unexceptionable in Yunxi's eyes. Hua Yu's crossed sword was also excellent. She was the strongest female swordsman in this test. One was a civilian, a poor girl who practiced her sword skill only for standing out amongst others. Another was an aristocratic miss, a gold rose-like maiden who had received the best education since her childhood. Xiao Chao's sword was a long steel sword. Its outward appearance was weathered and antiquated. However, it was the best weapon the villagers had purchased from a traveler, and in order to buy it, the villagers had spent all of their money. Hua Yu's sword was a gorgeous holy crossed sword. Its sword handle was set with a white gold cross, and its sword blade was engraved with beautiful elf-style patterns. It was even more expensive than Child Si Nian's 2-handed heavy blue sword and was a spirit weapon that could be used up till the hero rank. A civilian and an aristocratic miss. Xiao Chao was as ordinary as a stalk of little grass, Hua Yu was exalted like a rose. They should have been in 2 different camps. Their appearances had also highlighted their differences. Xiao Chao had light freckles on her face, plus her fallow-colored ponytail and simple leather armor. Everyone could determine her poverty. Although Xiao Chao's face was delicate, but apparently, she didn't pay too much attention in dressing herself up. She was just a normal village girl. Hua Yu wore elaborate silver armor, and every part of the armor had been crafted. It was as perfect as her figure, far above any luxury goods. The silver lines on her armor highlighted her supple breasts. If comparing just one's figure and appearance, Hua Yu was obviously the winner. The size of Hua Yu's breasts had shown the desperate gap between them. If there was a way to change breasts into fighting capacity, Hua Yu was no doubt 3 times stronger than Xiao Chao. However, due to a single person, they were not confronting each other with hostility. They smiled, crossing each other's sword. Xiao Chao, if you don't want to lose, try to defeat me with your full strength, Hua Yu said. Since Hua Yu's childhood, she had been taught by a famous knight from Western God's domain. Her crossed sword was a very powerful sword skill. Besides, she had the blessing of the fantastic black hair. She was only 1 step away from reaching the 2nd rank. If no accident happened, she would be one of the few female swordsmen who would enter Sword Palace by their own talents. She had also obtained the miracle appearing in the other girls' bodies. As a girl who had received the standard sword skill education, she knew the importance of that miracle. Everything was because of the inexplicable relationship with that mysterious black-haired maid, Mei. Xiao Chao had yet to understand the changes, however, she could instinctively master the power of that miracle. Amongst the 37 female swordsmen, she was the only girl who was match for Hua Yu. Hua Yu wasn't wrong. Amongst the 37 female swordsmen, Xiao Chao's and her talent were the best. Due to this, they had high affinity with Yun Shi seeds and absorbed most of the seed's power. Xiao Chao had learned Hua's basic breathing method. She steadily walked on the road leading to the strongest sword skill. Hua Yu had absorbed the most gorgeous and powerful part of Flying Swallow sword, which meant that she had learned the swallow returns. They are going to reach the 2nd rank. Due to the threads, Yun Shi could see Xiao Chao and Hua Yu's growth through his naked eyes. Maybe Hua Yu had more adequate nutrition. In Yun Shi's eyes, her growing speed was slightly faster than Xiao Chao. Perhaps she would be the first girl reaching the 2nd rank. I will never admit defeat. Xiao Chao looked at Hua Yu's chest with envy. then looked at her own flat chest. For the first time in her life, she showed a depressed look on her face. If only sword skill was involved, she could catch up with Hua Yu through hard work. However, chests, the gap between them was hopelessly too wide. How much milk had Hua Yu drank that her breasts were so big? Hee, don't mind, you're still at the puberty age. After we enter Sword Palace, I will recommend you some cookbooks that can help you become big. Hua Yu knew that Xiao Chao would no doubt enter Sword Palace, so she played up to Xiao Chao and showed vague gloating in her eyes. The Western God's domain speciality, Highland milk, was incredibly expensive. Fortunately, she had inherited her mother's bloodline so that she could absorb the Highland milk to get herself into so proud a shape. As an aristocratic miss, she had always tried her best to keep her knowledge, sword skill and appearance perfect. I don't have money, Xiao Chao said and shook her head, then grasped her sword. She was poor. Even if she had money, she would use it to strengthen her equipment and not to enhance her breasts. Don't worry. After you join Sword Palace, the door to a new world will open for you, Hua Yu said. She wasn't lying. The Sword Palace only recruited talented swordsmen. Once Xiao Chao reached the hero rank, she would have a chance to enhance her breasts. At least, as far as Hua Yu knew, hundreds of gods' domains had posted an inconceivable reward for catching a multi-headed demon dragon. The multi-headed demon dragon's blood was a priceless treasure that could save the poor girls whose breasts were incurably flat. It was said that countless forces had joined up trying to catch that multi-headed demon dragon, but none of them had achieved success. The multi-headed demon dragon was still on the run. Chapter 84, White gold rose in the sights of the crowd. The battle between Xiao Chao and Hua Yu started. Out of many people's expectation, Hua Yu wasn't the person who made the proactive attack. Xiao Chao seemed to have a premonition. For the first time in her life, she gave up her stable attack style but launched an indomitable, straight attack towards Hua Yu. Her sword was unpretentious and her thrusting was simple. However, when Xiao Chao brandished her sword, her moves were so pleasing to the eye. Stable. Xiao Chao's moves were extremely stable and her sword skill was as basic as the content in the textbook. This was Xiao Chao's sword. A mortal sword. No one had taught Xiao Chao anything. She had mastered the basic sword skill through brandishing her sword millions of times. In that case, she could stand out from the candidates and stand on the stage of the final four. Ding! Hua Yu stepped forward, parrying Xiao Chao's thrusting attack by using her white gold crossed sword. Hua Yu's sword skill was straight and gave the crowd a sacred feeling, because her sword skill was an authentic knight legacy from Western God's domain. She had the bloodline of white gold rose flag in her body. Her teacher was a white gold knight who was admitted by Night God's domain. Ding! 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 Xiao Chao performed continuous thrusts. Without any fancy tricks, her continuous thrusting was just strengthening the most standard thrusting attack again, and again, gathering all her strength together to launch a general attack towards Hua Yu. My sword skill was invented by Shinra, the legendary white gold rose knight. It is called a holy crossed sword, Hua Yu said. She held her white gold crossed sword with both her hands and looked pretty devout. She showed strong self-confidence and inviolability in her eyes. She was different from other noble children because she was a girl who had the true knight bloodline. Her ancient bloodline gave her a tough character and dignified will, and helped her practice to her limit. Xiao Chao's sword skill had nearly reached perfection. Hua Yu's sword skill wasn't inferior to hers, but more balanced and biased towards the knight's creed. If Xiao Chao's sword skill was as wild as a strand of grass, then Hua Yu's sword skill was as steady as an upright cross. Unlike Flying Swallow sword, Hua Yu's sword skill was very different from the traditional Eastern sword skill style. It was a sword skill from Western Night God's domain. My teacher used to say that if I wanted to practice crossed sword, then I had to understand the meanings of humility, integrity, compassion, bravery, justice, sacrifice, honor, and soul. Hua Yu's will and spirit were rising. She threw out her chest with pride, as if something was growing in her body. Yun Shi felt it. Although it was pretty weak, but there was a small seed rapidly growing in the girl's body. I will be kind to the weak. I will be brave against the strong. I will fight all who do wrong. I will fight for those who cannot fight. I will help those who call me for help. I will harm no woman. I will help my brother. I will be true to my friends. I will be faithful in love. That was the knight's creed and their virtue. Every knight would swear the words before they chose their own path. In the name of White Gold Rose bloodline, I choose the holy sword. Hua Yu raised her white gold crossed sword, telling the world her choice. Red Lotus looked at Hua Yu in surprise. Hua Yu was covered in white lights. Obviously, she was awakening her own bloodline ability. Isn't it the bloodline oath of Night God's domain? How? Is she, N? She is my older female cousin, Hua Hua nodded. Although Hua Yu's bloodline was slightly inferior to Hua Hua's bloodline, but the White Gold Rose bloodline was also a top-level bloodline in Western God's domain. Many legendary knights were proud of having this bloodline. Her name, Hua Hua, also had some relationship with Hua Yu's family. After all, their families were allies, and for thousands of years the two families had had strong connections through marriages. Instantly, Hua Yu broke the barrier blocking the way leading to the second rank. After she confirmed her own will and swore to be a knight, her power started rising. She immediately broke through the primary stage of the second rank, the middle stage of the second rank, and the final stage of the second rank. Hua Yu's power kept growing till she had almost reached the third rank, then the boiling power of her bloodline finally began to fade away. Due to her awakened bloodline, her black hair turned gold and her pupils mixed with light blue. That was the proof of her resurgent old bloodline. I'm too late, Xiao Chao sighed. She took the active attack because she had noticed that Hua Yu was going to level up. If she couldn't defeat Hua Yu before that, she would lose. Unfortunately, she was too late. Now, the gap between their powers would no longer be reduced through skills. Hua Yu wasn't Lin Feng. Her sword skill was flawless. Besides, she also had the blessing of the black hair. Is this bloodline awakening? Hua Yu was satisfied with the appearance she saw from the reflection in her sword blade. White Gold Rose bloodline deserved its reputation. As a top-level bloodline from Night God's domain, it would let the owner return to their bloodline origin. Once her hair totally turned gold and her eyes totally turned blue, her bloodline awakening would finally complete. Holy Crossed Sword. Flying Swallow Sword. After awakening her bloodline, Hua Yu immediately performed the sword skill she had learnt from Yun Shi's seed. Even if it was for catching a rabbit, the lion would make an all-out effort. Hua Yu knew Xiao Chao's potential better than anyone. She knew that if she didn't overcome Xiao Chao as quickly as possible, it wouldn't be surprising to see Xiao Chao also reaching the second rank at any time. Even though Xiao Chao was in an absolutely inferior position, she didn't give up hope and tried her best to struggle to win. Ding! 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 With a series of crashes, Xiao Chao's steel sword issued a cry-like sound. In the face of Hua Yu's white gold crossed sword, the steel sword had been unable to hold on any longer. Finally, Hua Yu won the test after she shattered Xiao Chao's steel sword. Ha ha ha, I said before that a village girl can't be that strong. Just as I thought, the victory belongs to our noble families. Child Yun he let out a sigh of relief and laughed after seeing Hua Yu's victory. Chapter 85, Their Seeds Know, You're Wrong. In fact, Xiao Chao's talent was much better than Hua Yu's. Yunshi shook his head as Child Yun he laughed. At this moment, the two girls' seeds had appeared in his body. At the moment Xiao Chao's sword was shattered, a seed had appeared in her body. If Xiao Chao's sword had been tougher, the battle wouldn't have ended so fast. In that case, the final result would still be uncertain. Now, Yunshi absorbed the two newborn seeds into his body through the invisible threads between the two girls and himself. Yunshi himself also didn't expect that he would obtain the two girls' seeds in such a short period of time. He couldn't see any traces of any new seeds being born in the other 35 girls' bodies. Xiao Chao and Hua Yu both were just at the second rank, therefore the rank of their seeds wasn't high. As a person who had higher power, their seeds didn't have any secrets in Yunshi's eyes. Hua Yu's seed, Holy Crossed Sword, proficient. This is a knight sword skill from Western White Gold Rose family. It was beloved amongst knights and the people with evil intentions were unable to learn it. It was a pre-skill of a high-level sword skill, Holy Spirit Crossed Sword. White Gold Rose bloodline, partly awakened a high-level bloodline from Western White Gold Rose family. It can help the owner become a natural knight and offers a noticeable increase in the owner's strength and holy power. As a second-rank seed, it was pretty excellent. It was even better than the third-rank Monster Green Hippo seed. Besides, it was the first low-level seed Yunshi had seen that contained the bloodline from another god domain. However, although Xiao Chao was defeated due to a bad quality sword, her seed had more amazing properties. Xiao Chao's seed, Mortal Sword, perfect. The person who held this sword had practiced the Mortal Sword skill to the limit. In that case, the person was able to learn any high-level sword skills 2 times faster than ordinary people. Mind's Eye, incomplete. A kind of insight learning from practice and exercise. It could help the owner analyze the environment and catch the tiniest opportunity to reverse the situation. Combat Intuition, partly awakened. This ability could help the owner analyze the battle trend and respond to it in advance. At any time, the owner of this ability could use 100% strength. Persevering Heart, the grass-like girl had a persevering heart. It could help her open the door to a higher rank. This was too powerful. After seeing the properties of Xiao Chao's seed, Yunshi exclaimed in his heart. She was like a grass seed, sleeping under the ground to get through the chilly winter. As long as spring came, she would break through the endless dark and bloom in splendor. Xiao Chao's seed was just at the first rank, however, Yunshi had seen endless possibilities from it. Amongst all the girls Yunshi had seen, Xiao Chao's talent was only slightly inferior to Hua Hua. Undoubtedly, as long as she could keep growing, she would have the chance to reach the hero rank or an even higher rank. Although it was just a first-rank seed, but after obtaining it, Yunshi felt that the barrier which stopped him reaching the third rank was breaking. This was Xiao Chao's talent, a mortal superpower. Now, she was still an ordinary first-rank female swordsman, but Yunshi believed that someday, she would become a legend. Of course, Hua Yu wasn't inferior to Xiao Chao. She was also excellent. However, compared to Xiao Chao's amazing talent, she still needed to improve herself. Maybe their competition would continue for a pretty long time. Hua Yu's bloodline and sword skill were better than Xiao Chao's. Xiao Chao had a higher learning ability, comprehension, and willpower. They were Grass and White Gold Rose. The two nicknames were really suited to them. I lost. Xiao Chao's eyes were inflamed. She collected the fragments of her broken sword sadly. For the first time in her life, she was defeated on such a momentous occasion and tasted the bitter taste of failure. If her weapon had been tougher. If she could see through Hua Yu's moves earlier. However, there wasn't any if existing in the world. She had been defeated. That was the truth. Moreover, her opponent hadn't used any tricks but defeated her through a fair battle. She shouldn't make her weapon as the excuse. Fairness wasn't a word existing on the real battlefield. Don't get discouraged. I know you haven't dug out your true power. As the winner, Hua Yu gracefully stretched out her hand to Xiao Qiao. Next time, you should use a better weapon. And Xiao Qiao nodded. She carefully collected the fragments of her broken steel sword and walked off the stage together with Hua Yu. Great. You did well. Xiao Qiao, how did you do that? Hua Yu's attack, even if it was I facing that attack, I didn't think that I could dodge it, but you parried it. What a pity. If you had a better weapon, you wouldn't lose so fast. I would have lent you my sword if I had foreseen this result. The female swordsman laughed and greeted their return. Everyone sighed for Xiao Qiao's failure. Compared to the battle between Mei and Child Xin Yan, and the battle between Mei and Child San Quan, they could clearly understand and learn from the battle between Xiao Qiao and Hua Yu. Everyone had learned a lot from their battle. Some of them had almost seen the road leading to the second rank. Sorry, I lost. I couldn't beat her, Xiao Qiao said with a sad look as she nervously walked to Yunxi. She had also been defeated in the past, but this time, she felt extremely unwilling. Xiao Qiao, only the person who had tasted the pain of failure could understand the value of victory. Maybe no person in the world had experienced more deaths and failures than Yunxi. Due to the star's Yandra love, he was slaughtered by the Green Hippo in the newbie trial, and in the formal trial, the Stone Soldier army had killed him again and again. At that time, he had almost started to doubt the meaning of his life. Therefore, he understood Xiao Qiao's feeling. Failure is the mother of success. It's not a terrible thing to be defeated. As long as you're still alive, you will have the chance to win. And Xiao Qiao lowered her head. After a while, she grasped the fragments of her sword in her hand, flashing a bright smile at Yunxi. Of course, she wouldn't be unable to get up after this failure. She was Xiao Qiao, a strand of little grass, and grass could grow in any terrible environment. Hua Yu was strong. For now, I couldn't find a way to defeat her. In that case, I should train myself harder. This is the reason why I participated in the Sword Palace's entrance test. Isn't it? Xiao Qiao made a decision in her heart. Looking at Xiao Qiao's smiling face, Yunxi suddenly blushed. The thread between them was quietly dyed with a different color. Arf! Hua stared at Xiao Qiao and Yunxi. A terrible feeling was accumulating in her heart. Is it my imagination? It must be my imagination. Yunxi, why are you exchanging love glances with that girl named Xiao Qiao? You're my great sword maid. Chapter 86, Bloodstained Skill. I'm the winner. Mei, you can't be biased towards her. Hua Yu's hair had become a beautiful white gold. She smiled, teasing Xiao Qiao and Yunxi. Hua Yu, Xiao Qiao crossed her fingers with Yunxi's fingers, looking at Hua Yu with a slightly hostile glance. Under Hua Yu's white-silver armor, her breasts seemed to have become a little bigger. That was too unfair. Did Bloodline Awakening have such a benefit? That was too enviable. For a moment, the atmosphere between them turned strange. They both felt that they were each other's destined rival. Hua Yu, congratulations. Yunxi immediately said to resolve the strange atmosphere between Hua Yu and Xiao Qiao. From their seeds, Yunxi had learned that they both were geniuses and had a bright future. Hua Yu had the white gold rose bloodline and Xiao Qiao had her mortal sword. They had just condensed their seeds, but that had shown their powerful talent. Thanks. I really didn't expect that the legend was real, Hua Yu threw out her chest. Yunxi blushed to see his black hair lucky charm swaying between her two plump breasts. At the same time, Yunxi found that the thread between Hua Yu and himself was rapidly getting solid. In Hua Yu's body, Yunxi's seed was growing up healthy and strong. In Yunxi's body, Hua Yu's seed was sprouting merrily. The invisible thread was closing their distance. Gee! This feeling, at first, Hua Yu just planned to say something to Xiao Chao, but her face suddenly turned red. Why? What is this feeling? She felt her chest choking. Was it because the white gold armor pressed her breasts because they suddenly became bigger? Her heart was beating extremely fast. She had never felt such an anxious feeling. Calm down. Clam down. I'm Hua Yu, the inheritor of White Gold Rose bloodline and the practitioner of Holy Crossed Sword. Keep the 8 virtues of knights firmly in your mind. Don't panic. Yunxi vaguely felt that some changes had happened to the thread between Xiao Chao and himself and the thread between Hua Yu and himself. In his mind, the threads were just used to exchange their battle experiences and understanding about sword skills. But now, they were developing towards an unknown path. As Yunxi felt confused, he suddenly heard a provocative sound from the stage. That maid, come here. Child Yun. He finally couldn't retain his composure. Hua Yu coldly took a glance at Child Yun He as if she was looking at a dying frog. Xiao Chao also looked at Child Yun He with freezing eyes after she left go of Yunxi's hand. At this time, they were so similar. Not only them. All the female swordsmen looked at Child Yun Shi as if they were looking at a dead man. Are you poking fun at me? Child Yun He got angry. As the most famous child of this region and the genius who had inherited Crane Wing's twin swords, he had never been despised by anyone before. Humph. The girls had no fear of his threat. Several civilian female swordsmen even showed him their middle fingers. So what? They said. Well. Very well. Child Yun He went mad. Let me show you the true power of our noble families. He decided to use his Crane Wing's twin swords. Right now. Immediately. Even though he knew that the twin swords couldn't be counted as his own power and he would be teased by others due to it, he had decided to show them as his strongest trump card to teach the maid named Mei a lesson. The maid was a second-rank female swordsman and was talented in sword skills, and she had defeated Child Xin Yan and Child San Quan, and if compared to them, Child Yun He knew that his strength was inferior to Child Xin Yan and his power was inferior to Child San Quan. In that case, he wasn't likely to defeat the maid with great ease. However, he had the twin swords. They were a pair of spirit swords that were handed down from age to age within his family. Now, their own sword souls had been born and they were only one step away from becoming a pair of artifacts. If he used his blood to control the twin swords, he would be invincible amongst all third-rank swordsmen. I know you can use air battle sword skill. In that case, I will crush your self-confidence in the field you're good at. No one can beat my Crane Wing's twin swords. Let's start. Yunxi took a deep breath to adjust his physical condition to the best, then stepped onto the stage with confidence. I won't give you the chance to use your flying swallow sword. At the moment Yunxi stepped onto the stage, Child Yun He immediately drew out his Crane Wing's twin swords from his back and used them to cut his wrist. He was using his blood to active the twin swords. He was still at the mortal rank. Since he wanted to active the twin sword's flying ability, then he must pay something. After seeing how Child San Quan was instantly defeated by Yunxi's The Swallow Returns, Child Yun He had decided to active the twin swords as soon as the battle between them started. Fly to the sky, Crane Wing's twin swords. One sword was male and the other one was female. After being stained with Child Yun He's blood, they rapidly flew into the sky and shot themselves at Yunxi. As Yunxi had known, the twin swords were really fast and strong. Yunxi raised his iron sword and stepped back with a straight face. Go to hell. Child Yun he feverishly sprinkled his blood in Yun-Shi's direction. 1, 2. Yun-Shi remembered and adjusted his steps. He had only one chance. If he failed, he wouldn't have another chance. Come on, Crane Wing's twin swords. Come to me. Chi. As Child Yun he rejoiced with wild excitement, the twin swords smoothly stabbed into Yun-Shi's body. That is, Red Lotus had prepared to teleport Yun-Shi out of the stage and announced his failure. However, the next moment, a gust of special energy burst out from Yun-Shi's body. After seeing this, Red Lotus stopped. That's strange. I didn't teach little Shi this skill. It's too dangerous for him. Hua Hua was dumbfounded after she saw Yun-Shi's behavior. Blood covered Yun-Shi's eyes. He felt pain and the similar feeling of linked bloodlines. This time, he caught Crane Wing's twin swords in the real world but not the trial in his dream. Kill her, Crane Wing's twin sword. Child Yun he showed a cruel smile. He didn't know why the twin witches hadn't stopped the battle and announced his victory, but he didn't care. In this case, he would catch this opportunity to kill the mysterious black-haired maid, Mei. Tear apart her 4 limbs and crush her heart. No one had made him feel such panic. He must kill her. At this moment, Yun-Shi opened his mouth. My blood will dye the ground, flow into the sea and cover the sky. Blood-stained secret skill. Chapter 87, Obtaining the Twin Swords. We meet again, Crane Wing's twin swords. For an instant, the twin swords had drained nearly 1/10 of Yun-Shi's blood. However, he showed no signs of being in pain but looked at the Crane Wing's twin swords with a smile, although his heart had almost been cut through by them. Who are you? 2 indistinct voices came from the twin swords. They were the sword spirits of the twin swords. One of the twin swords was male and the other female. After thousands of years, 2 incomplete souls had been born within the twin swords. This meant that the twin swords were only one step away from becoming a pair of artifacts. It was said that the twin swords were forged by the legendary craftsman OGZ successor. After they had appeared in the world, they were doomed to be embryonic forms of a pair of artifacts. Unfortunately, no one from the Yunhe family were as talented in sword skills like Yun-Shi. They weren't even able to contact the sword spirits of the twin swords. Up to that moment, Yun-X touched the twin souls in the twin swords by performing the forbidden skill. We once fought side by side. Maybe you have forgotten it, but it was a really pleasant memory, Yun-Shi said with a yearning tone. He reached out both his hands, grabbing the sword handles in his 2 hands. He drew the twin swords out of his body bit by bit. Impossible. That's impossible. What is happening? Kill her, kill her. Crane Wing's twin swords. Crane Wings. Child Yun he was really flabbergasted as he saw Yun-Shi drawing the twin swords out of his body. They were his family's spirit swords. They were the family's most valuable treasures. Suddenly, Child Yun he remembered an old tale told in his family. Long, long ago, when the successor of OEZ presented the Crane Wing's twin swords to his family, he had also left a message. At that time, OEZ's successor and the Yunhe family master were very good friends. Crane Wing's twin swords were made from the materials they collected together and were the tokens of their friendship. The twin swords are my most satisfying work, but my friend, remember, powerful weapons always choose their own masters. When the twin swords become a pair of artifacts, they will have their own souls. If your descendants can't master them at that time, I'm afraid that they will leave your family. It doesn't matter. If Crane Wing's twin swords think that my descendants are unworthy of using them, they can just leave and choose their new master by themselves. Could it be that? Would it be that? Child Yun he shivered as he thought of that possibility. No, no, it won't happen. She is just an unknown maid. Crane Wing's twin swords will never accept her. Crane Wing's twin swords were very proud. No one, even if they were hero-rank swordsmen, could control them in the past hundreds of years. After all, they were doomed to be a pair of artifacts. Start verifying. Crane Wing's twin swords didn't immediately accept Yunshi like what they did in the trial, but began a series of complicated verifications. Gender verifying. Pass through. Bloodline talent verifying. Pass through. Adaptability with the twin swords. Pass through. All the verifications have passed through. Acceptable. Acceptable. Yunshi heard two similar voices coming from the twin swords. After that, he saw the two sword spirits. The male sword spirit was a boy wearing a Taoist priest's robe. His hair had almost grown to his feet. The female sword spirit was a cute girl with two hair buns. She was also wearing a Taoist priest's robe. They were twins just like the twin witches. However, they had just been born into the world and hadn't built their gender conception. This was the first time Yunshi had seen the twin sword spirits, but he vaguely felt that something was wrong. Completed verification. We have waited for you for a long time. We're the Crane Wing's twin swords. We share the same destiny and will never be parted. Transmit the data, Yunhai's memory. The twin swords resonated. One old rune word after another flowed into Yunshi's mind. Time seemed to turn back at that moment. Yunshi saw the distant past. He saw the birth of the twin swords. A tall man carrying a big package on his back was hammering the unfinished twin swords. Ding! Ding! A heavy hammer carried sparks and electric lights, knocking on the twin swords. The place was at the top of the mountains. What now? Are you satisfied with the materials I collected? A man stepped on the clouds, leisurely walking to the tall man. The tall man was several times larger than the man who just came from the clouds. Obviously, the tall man wasn't a human. Very good. I think I can make the embryonic forms of a pair of artifacts. Perhaps they will be the most satisfying works of my life. However, I have to tell you that they need time to gestate their souls. I'm afraid that they currently will be of no use to you, Yunhai. I don't mind. In that case, I will leave them to my descendants. Just in time, I was planning to leave my family an heirloom. The man named Yunhai looked at the unfinished twin swords with a satisfied smile. I'm afraid that your descendants will be unable to control the twin swords after the twin swords have souls, the giant man said and shrugged his shoulders. Haha. If my descendants are so useless at that time, then the twin swords deserve to be free. Very few families can survive in the world for over thousands of years. I will let the twin swords protect them for 1,000 years. After that, their fate will depend on themselves. Oh right, we haven't given the twin swords a name. Any idea? Yunhai asked his friend, the giant man, who had come from Western God's domain in order to collect materials. Tulane twin swords. How about that? The twin swords will become my family's heirloom. How can they have a Western-style name? Well, then. Yin-Yang twin swords. Your taste is really bad. Sigh, leave it to me. I will name my family Yunhee. It means leisurely like clouds and elegant like cranes. In that case, I will name the twin swords Crane Wing's twin swords. I will seal all my experience and sword skills into the twin swords. After the twin swords have souls and find their new master, I will let the new owner inherit my legacy. I don't know when and where you will see this information. I don't know if you are my descendant, but that doesn't matter. I will show you my strongest sword skill, Yunhai's quadrant sword. Chapter 88, Yunhai's legacy. Since you have been chosen by Crane Wing's twin swords, I allow you to inherit my legacy. Remember, the sea of clouds is shapeless. The secret of my sword skill isn't in the sword but in your heart. Yunhai was the man's name, but also meant the sea of clouds. Yunhai stepped on the sea of clouds and started to perform his strongest sword skill. Yunshi found out that he didn't understand this sword skill at all because he couldn't see any signs that the man named Yunhai was performing his sword skill. In his eyes, Yunhai was just casually walking on the clouds without any purpose. No matter how many times I have seen your sword skill, it's still so scary. The giant man constricted his pupils as he looked at his best friend, Yunhai. Scary? He wasn't even performing his sword skill. Why did the giant man say scary? As Yunshi looked at them in confusion, Yunhai had stopped and looked around with a relaxed look. The next moment, the mountains and the sea of clouds were suddenly torn to rags as if the space itself had become a shredded picture scroll. Yunshi finally realized that why the giant man had said scary. Because Yunhai's sword skill killed nothing but the world itself. Cough. After Yunshi returned his mind to the real world, he saw a madman. Give them back. They're my family's heirloom. Child Yun was as hysterical as a lunatic at this moment. Fail the Sword Palace's entrance test. If he compared it to losing the family's twin spirit swords, that was just a trivial thing. Child Yun refused to believe that Crane Wing's twin swords that had protected his family for 1,000 years, had now accepted a stranger as their new master. Even though he knew the tale told in his family, he still couldn't accept that. He inherited the name as the current Child Yun. If he lost the twin swords, he would no longer be the Child Yun, but the sinner of his family. I can't lose the Crane Wing's twin swords. They are mine, my precious. You're just a menial maid. How can it be possible that you have better talent than me and are accepted by my Crane Wing's twin swords? This isn't true. It's just like the nightmare I had last night. Yes, this is another nightmare. Yes, this is a dream, a dream. Maybe it was because Child Yun was stimulated too much. He remembered a part of his experience in last night's dream. In the dream, he had also lost the Crane Wing's twin swords, but after he woke up, the twin swords were still on his back. In the dream, a monster had killed him dozens of times, but after he woke up, he was still unscathed. Ha ha ha, so it is. This is a dream. I'm still dreaming. I won't die in my own dream. I will get my twin swords back. By fair means or foul. Give them back. Child Yun fiercely stared at Yunshi. He opened his hands, making a posture as if he was playing the game Hawk and Chicken. Anyway, this is just a dream. I can revive any time after my death. In this situation, I have nothing to fear. And you? You are just an unknown maid. You should be afraid of me. I will pull you down on the ground and punish you. Sigh, Yunshi shook his head. He remembered the man named Yunhai. As Yunhai's descendant, Child Yun's behavior was really scandalous. After finishing the verification procedures, Crane Wing's twin swords made melodious sounds and flew to Yunshi's hand. Although Yunshi had seen Yunhai's quadrant sword, but naturally, he couldn't perform it, because it was a godlike sword skill just like Hua's sky-flying sword. They were not sword skills for mortals. Yunshi didn't know why Hua could perform sky-flying sword as a third-rank female swordsman. That had broken the rules of the mortal rank. However, Yunshi's opponent was Child Yun, and Child Yun didn't deserve to have him use any godlike sword skills. Flying Swallow six-fold attack. Crane Wing's twin swords drew two graceful arcs in the air, cutting through Child Yun's body 3 times. Child Yun toppled down to the ground. This claimed the failure of the last member of the noble family's camp. This is a dream, a dream. This must be a dream. As long as I use my crane wings twin swords, no one is match for me. I can kill them all. Ha 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 ha, I, Child Yun-hee, am invincible. Child Yun-hee sat on the ground and laughed crazily. He couldn't believe that he had lost crane wings twin swords but regard the real world as a dream. Humph. His psychological quality is really bad. He is really inferior to Xiao Chao, because Xiao Chao could kept fighting even after her sword was shattered. He doesn't deserve to be called genius. Tut tut. He looks like a man whose wife had been robbed. What a shame. The female swordsman looked at Child Yun-hee with disdain. It became the last straw that broke Child Yun-hee's self-respect, making him lose his mind completely. Red Lotus quietly looked at Child Yun-hee. After a while, she shook her head and crossed his name out of the admission list. His psychological quality is too weak. No admission. At first, Child Yun-hee's name had already been written on the admission list. However, his insane behavior made him lose the opportunity. Finally, the final started. May, I will do my best to challenge you. Well, you didn't know the reason why, but when she looked at May, she felt her heart suddenly beating faster. No, I shouldn't have these feelings. We are both girls. Hua Yu warned herself and repeated the 8 virtues of knights in her heart. Humility, integrity, compassion, bravery, justice, sacrifice, honor, soul, I love you. No, no. I didn't say the last words. There must be something wrong. Hua Yu blushed. Humility, integrity, compassion, love, bravery, justice, sacrifice, honor, soul, I love you very much. Arg. That's not right. What's wrong with me? Hua Yu had never felt so nervous. She couldn't even hold her white gold crossed sword steadily in her hand. Again. It started growing again. Yun-shi couldn't stop his sweat from streaming down his face. The invisible thread between Hua Yu and him was growing and making their relationship closer. Their seeds were rapidly exchanging their experiences about 10 times faster than usual. He had seen this scene before, when he and Hua were in the volcano district of the formal trial. Shuffle. Hua Yu drew out her sword. Her thoroughly tempered sword skill was still powerful. The white light on her sword was even brighter than what it showed in the battle between Xiao Chao and herself. Big boobs. My enemy, Xiao Chao whispered. Now, she could only watch Yun-shi and Hua Yu's battle with depression. Big boobs are guilty. Hua clenched her teeth, staring at Yun-shi and Hua Yu. In her eyes, they were not fighting each other but sending silent messages with their eyes. Even though you're my elder female cousin. You can't do that. Little she is mine, my precious. The volcano named Jealousy was going to erupt. Chapter 89, The Hidden Sword That's Strange. Is she deliberately trying not to harm me? Yun-shi's crane wings twin swords and Hua Yu's white gold crossed sword continuously crisscrossed in the air. They had seen through each other's sword skills and moves. Although their battle seemed to be very violent, but actually, it was posed very little danger. Compared to the battle between Child Yun-hee and himself, Yun-shi felt that he was actually playing a game now. If he had to describe the difference, that would be the strange atmosphere between them as they attacked each other. She will perform continuous attacks from the front. She is going to launch a charge attack. Oh, this is Xiao Chao's continuous thrusting. Has she had learned that? Yun-shi discovered that he had been wrong. Hua Yu's talent wasn't inferior to Xiao Chao's. As her white gold rose bloodline awakened, her crossed sword skill was becoming perfect. Compared to Flying Swallow's sword, which was nimble and unpredictable, crossed sword unified both attack and defense. Hua Yu's sword skill was biased towards defense. She preferred to counterattack after making sure of her own safety. In some way, her battle style restrained Flying Swallow Sword. Xiao Chao's sword was a mortal sword that had reached the limit. Hua Yu's sword was a gorgeous and usable holy crossed sword. Ding! Crane Wing's twin swords and holy crossed sword collided with each other in the air and made euphonious tremulous sounds. They were both hero-rank weapons such that mortals couldn't release their true powers. No matter whether it was Yun Shi or Hua Yu, they both could only use a small part of their sword's powers. As the old proverb said, diamond cuts diamond. This was the best picture to describe their current situation. Yun Shi planned to learn from Hua Yu and practice during the exam, so he didn't use the twin sword's flying ability, but only used his Flying Swallow Sword to fight with Hua Yu. In order to repay Hua Yu for her seed, he deliberately became the whetstone for Hua Yu's awakened bloodline, to help her sharpen her holy crossed sword. At the same time, this would also help him improve his sword skill. After obtaining Xiao Chao's incredible talent, Mortal Sword, his last weakness had been offset. This was the best time for him to practice his sword skill. He met the right person at the right time. This was the meaning of this battle. They had already forgotten that they were having the Sword Palace's entrance test. They had only one goal, to temper their sword skills in this battle. Arg! I can't stand it. This is not a battle. Hua Hua was on tenterhooks. Her jealousy radar was warning her that her big-breasted elder female cousin was becoming more and more threatening. It's rare to see such a high-level competition. Why should we stop them? Red Lotus was satisfied with the current situation. She didn't think that she would ever see such a high-level sword skill competition again. Moreover, both sides were beautiful girls. Look! Even White Lotus was watching their competition with relish. White Lotus's smile was already worth it for her to come to this remote small town to hold the test. Prince, you're still so handsome. Star and Moon's ring, tell me, who is the most handsome and gorgeous prince in the world? There is only one answer, Yun Shi. White Lotus whispered to her Star and Moon's ring, then decided the answer with satisfaction. After Hua Yu brandished her sword for 130 times, her full breasts suddenly shook. Her beautiful white gold long hair fluttered with the wind as her holy crossed sword emitted pure white lights in her hand. The seed in Hua Yu's body had updated itself just now. Yun Shi immediately realized the seed's growth. At first, the property introduction of Hua Yu's holy crossed sword was proficient. Now, the description had become perfect. Her sword skill had reached the limit of mortals just like Yun Shi's Flying Swallow Sword. They were both at the second rank and had mastered perfect sword skills. Now, Hua Yu finally had equal power to be Yun Shi's opponent. The following attack will be my strongest attack. Hua Yu tightly held her crossed sword in her hand. She raised her sword in front of her chest and gazed at Yun Shi with a serious look. Defeat me with all your strength. I only accept to be defeated by you. Don't say no. I know you're the strongest person amongst all the candidates. I will. Yun Shi agreed. He knew that Hua Yu was serious. Her sword was straight and proud. There was no room for intrigue in her heart. Crossed sword. Hua Yu held her sword with her both hands. The sword blade formed a perfect parallel line with her body, taking the center of her chest as the separatrix. She announced the start of her strongest attack. Quicksilver motion. Yun Shi ran on the stage. His feet made ear-piercing screech with the ground. Holy seal. That was a cross-like light that was beyond the imagination of mortals. A white halo suddenly appeared in the air and covered Hua Yu's body. Yun Shi had only seen this scene once on another mortal rank swordsman before, his childhood sweetheart, Hua Hua. Was it a hero rank bloodline ability just like Huahua's sky-flying sword? In that case, the swallow returns. Yunxi's sword cut on the cross-shaped holy seal but did no harm. Huayu seized this opportunity, brandishing a gust of white sword wind towards Yunxi. That wasn't a sword wind that any mortals could make. That was the white gold crossed sword special ability. Crane wings. Flying. Yunxi let the twin swords fly to the sky. At the same time, he drew out the third sword from his waist. Ah! Huayu suddenly realized that Yunxi had a hidden sword. In fact, Yunxi didn't hide the third sword on purpose. However, Crane Wing's twin sword had drawn everyone's attention. They had almost forgotten that Yunxi was still holding his original sword. Yunxi performed his flying swallow six-fold attack, breaking Huayu's seemingly indestructible holy seal and put his sword on her neck. I was too careless. I forgot that you had the third sword, Huayu said with a smile. Although she was defeated, she didn't look very upset. Well, her holy seal seemed to be weaker than Huahua's sky-flying sword. It seemed to be a strong defense skill that would drain all the user's strength. Yunxi calculated the defense of Huayu's holy seal in his heart and had quite forgotten that he was still putting his sword on Huayu's neck. He subconsciously lost control of his sword and unconsciously saw the sword sliding down and pointing to Huayu's chest. Ah! Huayu blushed. She didn't know why Yunxi suddenly took liberties with her. What is she doing? Is this some special ritual of this area? Bang! Before Yunxi returned to Earth and realized what a mistake he had made, from the location of the twin witches, a person rushed to him in a burst of anger. Let go of my elder female cousin. Huahua. Yunxi asked with an innocent look. He still hadn't realized why his childhood sweetheart was so angry. On the hill 3 kilometers away, the archer in red suddenly brightened up his eyes and drew his black bow to its limit. Target in sight. Chapter 90, Elf's Attack, Huahua. Yunxi looked at Huahua, whose expression was really bad at this moment. His back was covered with cold sweat. May, you're my maid. Huahua stared at Huayu's full breasts and snow-white skin, then looked back at her own chest, having a very sad feeling in her heart. White Gold Rose bloodline had quite the superiority in regards to appearance. Once a girl awakened her White Gold Rose bloodline, she would become a natural blonde girl. Her skin was so soft and seduced people to bite it. She gave Yunxi a feeling that her skin would taste like sweet juice. After all, she was a blonde beauty. That was a pretty rare genre in the whole Sky Sword God's domain. Yunxi couldn't stop himself from indulging in fantasy. Gee. May, you're Huahua's maid. I see. Looking at Yunxi's black maid's uniform, Huayu saw the light suddenly. In the whole White Lotus Sword domain, only Huahua's family had the ability to train such a perfect maid. After all, Huahua was. Yes. I'm Huahua's great sword maid, Yunxi said with shyness. Although he wanted to take off the cursed maid's uniform immediately, but the threat of the unknown but definitely terrible apostle forced him to accept this identity. Great sword maid. Huayu was really shocked after hearing this. After all, Great Sword Maid's legacy wasn't something inferior to her White Gold Rose bloodline. Great Sword Maid never served specific people, because they were the gods' maids. In Western God's domain, to be a Great Sword Maid was every maid's dream. How could it be possible that a Great Sword Maid suddenly came to White Lotus Sword domain? This was the territory of Eastern God's domain. Humph. Not a bad maid, isn't she? I chose her to be my Great Sword Maid, inheriting the legacy of the third maid, killing Princess. Huahua proudly stood beside Yunxi. She felt that it was one of her smartest decisions to let Yunxi to be a Great Sword Maid. She inherited the legacy of the third maid, killing princess. Hua Yu didn't expect that she would see a living legend standing in front of her today. That explained the strange feeling when she saw the black maid's uniform. This wasn't a common maid's uniform. It could be regarded as a hard armor that was made of soft cloth. She knew the rarity of a great sword maid, and she knew of the value of the legacy Yun she had inherited. Every great sword maid who had a single-digit number had been recognized by the history itself. For thousands of years, none of them were mediocre. Killing Princess was the one who had the most powerful anti-person power amongst the top 10 great sword maids. She also had an alternate name which was less known but more bloody, Slaughtering Princess. However, in Hua Yu's eyes, she didn't see any signs that Mei was similar to the Killing Princess. Mei's eyes were so gentle and warm. She did not look like the bloody ruthless princess at all. At the same time, on top of a hill which was 3 kilometers away from the exam area, the archer in red finally took off her disguise. Under her feet, countless flame particles were lifted off the ground. They dispelled the magic she used to disguise herself and revealed her true appearance. Unlike what Yun Shi had seen in the Stars trial, after taking off her disguise, her figure was more petite than her disguise. She wasn't even taller than Hua Hua. Her pale white hair came down to her back, and her pointed ears revealed her true identity. She wasn't human. At the center of her forehead, there was a black gem that was inlaid. Her red cloak was covered with dust and scratches as if she had just picked it up from a corpse on the battlefield. Her beautiful amber pupils reflected translucent pale gold. Her black leather armor bound her slightly bulging chest, but exposed her snow-white belly without any cover. At first, she wore a pair of leather boots, but now, they had been burned to ashes by the suddenly raised temperature under her feet. Duo. Law. Ru. En, she whispered. A series of unintelligible runes flashed across the black gem on her forehead. That was the order. That was a switch. It removed her disguise and restored her true appearance as a dark elf. Target acquired. Trace, on. Extract bloodline power. Under her feet, the dark red ground started to heat up. After a while, the rocks melted and the ground became a pool of magma. Her naked feet steadily stood in the pool of magma. Her amber pupils coldly locked onto her target, Hua Hua, who was complaining about her childhood sweetheart's disloyalty. Name, Hua Hua. Current strength, the 3rd rank. Bloodline, sky-flying bloodline. As the dark elf whispered, her killing intent became more fierce. The flames under her feet had also become hotter. 10 Leaves Alliance, Black Obsidian, starts sniping. Along her body, one snake flame after another wriggled up to the bowstring of her black long bow. She didn't knock an arrow on the bow, for the flames were her bullets and her weapons. This was her superpower, which had transcended the power of flesh and blood. Similar to Hua Hua, the elf girl was controlling the hero rank power through her bloodline. Shuffle. The next moment, a scorching spiral arrow shot high into the sky. Soon afterwards, the 2nd arrow rose to the sky, then the 3rd arrow, the 4th arrow. They locked Hua Hua from all angles and directions. What are those? The twin witches were the first 2 people who recognized the danger. Red Lotus drew out her Red Lotus holy sword and White Lotus started to make madras. What? They're coming. Hua Hua and Yun Shi were the 3rd and the 4th people who saw the arrows. Hua Hua immediately drew out her long sword. Crane wings. Flying. Yun Shi ordered the twin swords. He held Hua Yu in his arms and rolled down the stage. The next second, over 10 flame arrows dropped from the clouds. They punctured the twin witches' arcane barrier and still aimed at Hua Hua from all directions. How dare you! Red Lotus reached out her hand. Her red lotus holy sword released a great amount of scorching aureoles, blocking half of the flame arrows. Seal. White Lotus also reached out her hands. She blocked 3 flame arrows. Yunxi's crane wings twin swords shot down one of the last 2 arrows. The last flame arrow was shattered by Hua Hua, who was in a really bad mood now. However, this wasn't the end. They were about to face even more terrible attacks. Chapter 91. Hua Hua goes ballistic. On the hill 3 kilometers away, the elf girl was surrounded by flaming particles and the black gem on her forehead reflected the situation on the stage. Report. Found outside interference. Computational error. The probability to complete the mission reduces to 10%. Warning. The Twin Witch's combat power is 10 times beyond the theoretical rate. Suggestion: release the male fiery dragon and enter air battle mode. 10 times combat power. The elf girl became dazed for a moment after hearing this. Apparently, the rival camp's combat power she had observed was far beyond the information that the Ten Leaves Alliance had provided her. She realized that she had made a fatal error in judgment. In the name of Black Obsidian, release the seal of the male fiery dragon. The elf girl whispered, with a series of mysterious rune words flashing through her unemotional pupils. A moment later, crimson scales appeared behind her naked feet. Grrrr. The male fiery dragon had buried its body in the hill for several days and only released a bit of its fire elemental power to support the elf girl in launching the attack. Now, with a world-shaking howl, it broke through the soil. Its howl was so loud that it could even be heard by people 10 kilometers away. Is it there? Hua Hua raised her head and looked at the flying dragon. Male fiery dragon. Yunxi had always been puzzled about why such a hero-ranked beast had appeared in his trial. Now, he understood the reason. The monster that was able to slaughter an army by itself was really here and was nearly right under his nose. Chi! 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 The second round started. 16 spiral fire arrows were approaching Hua Hua. There were more than in the first round, both in number and accuracy. Crane wings. Flying. Yunxi had already blocked the spiral arrows once. Now, his actions were more skilled. The twin swords turned into 2 lights, flying through the sky and intercepting about half of the arrows. Instantly, they detonated the flame arrows and stopped them from burning the ground. Good job, Mei. Hua Hua rushed towards the male fiery dragon without any hesitation. Be careful, Hua Hua. As the examiners, Red Lotus and White Lotus couldn't leave the examination area, so they could only encourage Hua Hua as her backup force. The Great Circulation. We are the stars shining in the starry sky. As long as our hearts are linked together, we will never apart from each other. Even if we couldn't hold each other's hand, we will still remember. White Lotus sang a children's folk rhymes which even Red Lotus hadn't heard before, offering the star and moon rings blessing to Hua Hua. After that, she pretended it to be unintentional, but also offered Yunxi her blessing. I'm sorry, but Hua Hua needs me now. Yunxi chased after Hua Hua after he handed over Hua Yu to Xiao Chao. Crane Wing's twin swords dropped under Yunxi's feet and carried him to make a short-range flight. It was fresh for Yunxi to experience overcoming gravity. However, it was costly. Even though the sword spirits could control the twin swords to launch endless times, but Yunxi couldn't control the sword spirits endless times. After all, Crane Wing's twin swords were doomed to be a pair of artifacts. As a mortal, to control the twin swords had already drained Yunxi of too much energy. If it was to control the twin swords flying into the sky, it would drain Yunxi of 10 times more energy. Fortunately, the destination was only about 3 kilometers away, that wasn't beyond Yunxi's limit yet. Find the target. Entering sniping mode. Cold killing intent appeared in the elf girl's amber pupils. She raised her black long bow and locked onto Hua Hua. However, she ignored Yunshi. Compared to Hua Hua, a second-rank maid was really nothing. Grower. The male fiery dragon opened its wings and flew into the sky carrying the elf girl, then emitted 3 fireballs from its mouth. Each fireball was filled with terrible lava. If any of these dropped onto the small town, 1/3 of the small town would be turned into a sea of fire. You want to run away? Hua Hua dismissively gazed at the fireballs, which were so scorching hot that they could harm hero-rank creatures. She didn't draw her sword, but stamped on the ground. Bang! An earth-shaking shock wave emerged from the ground and made countless crushed stones fly up into the sky. The stones hit the 3 fireballs and instantly detonated them, making the hero-rank attack become a magnificent firework. At that moment, Yunshi was standing on the twin swords and gliding in the air. He couldn't believe what he was seeing with his naked eyes. Hua Hua. It's already very incredible to master a hero-rank sword skill as a 3rd-rank female swordsman. How can you also have so much strong strength in addition to that? Even if your strength was 10 times stronger than the green hippos, it is impossible for anybody to do this. Are you really a 3rd-rank female swordsman? Update the data. Ignore redundant data and lock onto the target. Adjust to trace mode and launch the phantom flame arrow. The elf girl didn't show any fear on her face after seeing Hua Hua's earth-shaking stamp, but quietly revised Hua Hua's information. After that, she unleashed the 16 flame arrows attack again. The 16 spiral flame arrows fired at Hua Hua from 16 different angles. This time, the spiral flame arrows had a remarkable change. The arrows' bodies had become more slender, but the flames inside the arrows were unabated. The flames were compressed. She had become stronger. Yunshi recognized the archer in red. Although her body was more slender than her figure in the trial, but her skillful killing technology hadn't changed a bit. She always presented her enemies the most terrible continuous attack. Besides, she had updated her equipment and personal mount. She hadn't shown her real power in the Stars trial. Only when the male fiery dragon and her teamed up could they form the complete combination, Phantom Archer. This wasn't as simple as 1+1. After having the male fiery dragon support, her combat power would be strengthened to an incredible level. If she had appeared in the trial with her current power, Yunshi would have never crossed the bridge even if he had died 10,000 times. However, she wasn't fighting against Yunshi but Hua Hua at this time. Dong! Hua Hua stamped the ground and leapt into the air. The next second, Yunshi saw the true flying sky sword. Chapter 92, Sky Flying Sword. How dare you harm my little Shi? You will pay the price for your recklessness. Hua Hua didn't hide her anger and killing intention. Her blood was flowing at a high speed. She didn't know the reason, but after she saw that Yunshi was involved, she couldn't stop herself from flying into a rage. Burst! She activated her non-human bloodline ability, which was so terrible that even the Red Lotus Holy Virgin couldn't stop it. Yunshi could even see terrible bloody airflow surrounding Hua Hua with his naked eyes. Let me show you the true sky flying sword. In the face of the 16 flame spiral arrows, Hua Hua showed no fear. Her blood dropped down from between her fingers, dyeing her sword blade red. At first, the long sword was just a common sword from Sword Palace. After being stained with Hua Hua's blood, it burst out a gust of a fierce and terrible breath which obviously no mortal weapons would have. Then, a ring of light spread out from under Hua Hua's feet. Ta! For the first time ever, Yunshi saw his childhood sweetheart flying in the air. Sky Flying Sword could actually let the user fly to the sky. Once you mastered this sword skill, you would be able to overcome gravity, flying and fighting in the sky. Stepping on the suddenly appeared light ring, Huahua's speed increased again. She broke through the blockade line of the 16 arrows, rushing towards the flying male fiery dragon. Update the data again. The target's combat power has far surpassed the expectations. Adjust the attack mode. Entering air battle mode. The archer in red stood on the male fiery dragon's back. She controlled the dragon to hover around and dive, and at the same time, she aimed her arrows at Huahua with continuous shots. Spiral flame arrows, multiple spiral flame arrows, and shocking arrows continuously appeared in the air. Yunxi's nightmares seemed to have reappeared in the reality, and this time, they were enchanted with hero rank flames. That's futile. You will not escape. How dare you attack my little she? I will never let you go, even if you escape to the ends of the world. Huahua didn't know why she was so angry, but when she looked at the archer in red, she couldn't restrain her killing intent. The killing intent was very inexplicable but also very real. She felt as if she had returned to the moment when she had met the twin witches. Her killing intent was completely baseless, but also profound and unforgettable. When she met the twin witches she thought that she was oversensitive, but now, her killing intent was undoubtedly aiming at the right target. Die. The killing intent was also a pretty new emotion for Huahua. Another ring of transparent light appeared under Huahua's feet, turning into waves and spreading in the air. Walking in the air was the sky flying swords feature. By stepping on one light wave after another, people who were performing sky flying sword were able to increase their speed infinitely. They could even break into the atmosphere and fly amongst the stars using this method. Sky flying sword could break all rules and limits. It was a godlike sword skill that could let the user break the law of gravity to fly into the sky. Even creatures with wings such as birds or dragons couldn't overcome gravity. After all, they were still living beings under the atmosphere. Sky flying sword was faster than birds and stronger than dragons, standing in the sky and hovering over the world. All the information has been overturned. Failure probability, 100%. Carry out the backup plan. Seeing Huahua chasing after her with a speed that was beyond the human limit, the elf girl didn't show any signs of wavering in her eyes but immediately made a decision. Grower. The male fiery dragon stopped flying. It opened its crimson wings with feather-like scarlet particles covering both its wings. The elf girl stopping wasn't because she didn't want to fly to the higher sky, but because she and the male fiery dragon had had no way to flee. This was the highest sky the male fiery dragon could reach. The male fiery dragon's weight and strength restricted it from flying into the higher clouds. Besides, even if they could fly into the clouds, it was meaningless in the face of that monster, the girl who could sprint in the air infinitely. The information about Huahua and the twin witches that the Ten Leaves Alliance provided her was totally wrong. The team of a male fiery dragon and a phantom archer was far from sufficient to assassinate Huahua. Groar. The male fiery dragon also realized that something was very wrong. It started to prepare its last struggle. The flame particles on its wings started to spread to its whole body. Countless dark red veins appeared on its huge body, and its every breath caused terrible tidal waves of flames around its body. This was its ultimate skill, full force fire breath. Die. Huahua increased her speed again. She flew to the higher airspace, then inverted her body midair. Huahua's head was under her feet, looking pretty like an inverted cross. She firmly locked onto the roaring male fiery dragon and the archer in red. She really didn't restrain her killing intent because her little she's enemy was her own enemy. Sky flying sword, V for cleaving. No words could be used to describe her splendid sword skill. It was bright like fireworks. Yunxi could only watch it from the ground. This was the first time he had seen Hua Hua slaying a dragon in the real world. Under Hua Hua's slash, the male fiery dragon's great body was cleaved into two. Boom! Before the male fiery dragon breathed out flames from its mouth, it had exploded in the sky, becoming countless pieces of minced meat. Several sword lights flashed through the sky. Hua Hua was still chasing after something. Ding! Something was broken within the dragon's pieces of minced meat. Hua Hua finally stopped. The battle was over. Hua Hua showed her true power in front of Yun Shi and other people. Her magnificent feat of slaying the dragon with one slash made everyone fall into silence. Her battle had been beyond their understanding. No matter whether it was the flying male fiery dragon, or Hua Hua who killed the dragon, they were both monsters. In their eyes, Hua Hua was even more a monster than the male fiery dragon. For the first time ever, Yun Shi saw a real godlike sword skill with his own eyes. Any sword skills that were called godlike were recognized by all gods' domains. Sky Flying Sword could let the user fly in the sky and slay a dragon at the mortal rank. Yun Hai's Quadrant Sword could let the user cut up the world casually. They both were beyond a mortal's imagination. Hua Hua, you're flying too high. Yun Shi raised his head, gazing at Hua Hua with his sharp eyes. He saw a beautiful blue and white color. Oh, Hua Hua was wearing blue and white underwear today. Chapter 93, Inexplicable Sense of Crisis. After chopping the male fiery dragon into minced meat, Hua Hua still stayed in the sky and looked around in confusion. She still didn't know that her childhood sweetheart had seen her underwear. What's wrong? Yun Shi blushed and looked around Hua Hua. However, he didn't find any potential threats. The unknown archer in red should have been killed by Hua Hua. Because the distance was too far and the archer was riding on the male fiery dragon in the sky, Yun Shi just saw a vague figure that was covered by flame particles and didn't see her detailed appearance. That's strange. Where is her body? Hua Hua was sure that she had hit the target. She could smell blood that didn't belong to the male fiery dragon. At the last moment, the male fiery dragon exploded and made her lose trace of the archer. The mysterious elf suddenly vanished in thin air. Humph, you should feel lucky, Hua Hua murmured. She sheathed her sword and stepped on the transparent light ring, walking back to the ground. The archer had gone. She used some special skill to escape from this area. Compared to the archer's escape, Hua Hua paid more attention to her suddenly raised anger. What was that feeling exactly? When she saw the archer, she couldn't suppress her killing intent and directly launched her sky-flying sword. She had never had such a suddenly appeared killing intent before. Little Shi. Tell me the truth and you will receive a lighter sentence. What's the relationship between the archer and you? Hua Hua lightly fell back to the ground like a feather, then gazed at her childhood sweetheart with a skeptical eye. She had never had such a strong killing intent to anybody. Moreover, the archer was just a stranger. She felt that the mysterious archer in red had done some unforgivable things to her little Shi. Compared to the killing intent when she saw the twin witches, this time, the killing intent she had was more violent. Warning! 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 Danger! 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 She couldn't explain the feeling, but even she had slayed the archer's dragon and had seriously injured the archer, she still felt worried in her heart. Nay, little Shi, what's the relationship between the archer and you? Why did I feel a murderous rage when I saw her? Me, and her. Because the battle was over too quickly, Yun Shi had just seen a vague figure that was covered by flame particles. Compared to the tall archer who had killed him dozens of times in the trial, the figure was too slender and gave him a weird feeling. How could her slender body draw the long black bow? The bow was even taller than her body. Besides, her spiral arrows were even able to threaten hero-rank people. Obviously, the archer in red was more dangerous in the real world. I don't know her. I have never seen her before, Yunshi shook his head. He wasn't lying. He had never seen this elf archer in the real world before. This was a special race and career that only appeared in Western God's domain. It was unbelievable to see an elf archer in a remote district like White Lotus Sword domain. Hua Hua, are you in trouble? She was clearly coming to kill you. It seemed so obvious that the mysterious archer in red was locking on a special target. Hua Hua. You're right. She was looking for me. Hua Hua frowned. She had expected that as she showed her talent and power, the shadows of the past would come for her. It was because of her bloodline and identity. At first, she hadn't thought that Yunshi would be involved before he was 18 years old, and she hadn't hoped for him to be involved at all. However, she had failed to escape from her past. She thought that she could attain peace for a period of time by hiding in the remote White Lotus Sword domain, but they had still found this place. Who were they? The Gold Family, 10 Leaves Alliance, or Emptiness God Church. Many forces were eager for her sky-flying bloodline. Due to that event, her foster parents took her to the remote White Lotus Sword domain and let her have 10 years of a peaceful life. Yunshi was just an ordinary person. He was born in this town and only wanted to run his baker's shop. It shouldn't have any connection with him. The red alert of her jealousy radar should be a false alarm. Her little sheet should have had no contact with the various terrifying forces hiding in Western God's domain. Besides, the elf archer had white skin. She didn't look like a dark elf assassin from the 10 Leaves Alliance. But that was strange. The elves of Elf Forest always took a liking to sky-flying bloodline. They were always allies. Hua Hua couldn't make sense of it. Finally, she gave up thinking about it. She wasn't good at analyzing conspiracies. The inheritors of the sky-flying bloodline were always the strongest swords, but not strategists. Little Shi, congratulations, you passed the test. Let's go to Sword Palace together. Hua Hua smiled and imagined the coming study life. She held Yunshi's hand, then said with a serious look, tonight is the last night you will stay in the town. So, I will allow you to say goodbye to them. From tomorrow, you can't like any other girls. Yunshi looked at his black maid's uniform, then showed a weird smile. Hua Hua, you forced me to wear this uniform. How will any other girls like me in this case? Ca. Cough. In the mountains over 10 kilometers range, a bloodstained figure was toppled down beside a stream. She coughed blood and panted. Life state is in danger. Reverse the racial character. The black gem on the girl's forehead started to release all its remaining magical power to rouse her other bloodline. Her skin started to turn black. In addition to her pointed ears, she was obviously the elf's most hated kin, a dark elf. Her silvery white long hair also had begun to turn gray. This was the dark elf's normal hair color due to having lived in darkness endlessly. Chapter 94, The Black-Haired Girl's Legend. The most uproarious celebration, Sword Palace's entrance test, was all over now. It had really changed the whole small town. Finally, 17 candidates had passed the test and had been selected as Sword Palace's new disciples. Mei Yunshi took first place in the test. Hua Yu was the second. As a veritable aristocratic miss, her achievement saved the last shred of honor for the noble family's camp. The third was Xiao Chao. She was the representative of female swordsmen and civilian swordsmen. Originally, the fourth should have been Child Yunhee. However, after losing his crane wings twin swords, he had gone mad, so he was disqualified and his ranking had been replaced by a female swordsman. From the 5th to the 12th, they were all female swordsmen who had obtained seeds from Yunxi. Till the 13th, a noble swordsman held this position because he was lucky enough to avoid fighting with most of the female swordsmen in the test. Amongst the 17 selected candidates, 14 of them were female swordsmen who had obtained the Black Hare's blessing. This was an unprecedented achievement in the whole history of White Lotus Sword Palace's entrance test. Apart from the 17 selected people, there were also other candidates that had shown amazing power and potential in the test. They had also received an opportunity. These candidates' average level was really beyond everyone's imagination. Therefore, the shortlist had also created a new record. There were a total of 30 people who got the opportunity to go to Sword Palace. Although when compared to the 17 selected people, the rest of the people were only recognized as Sword Palace's apprentices, but they still had a chance to become formal disciples. As the two childs who unfortunately met Yun Shi, Child Si Nian and Child San Quan were both on the shortlist. It wasn't hard for them to become formal disciples, however, they would wait for at least half a year before they could achieve that. Apart from the already selected female swordsmen, the other female swordsmen were all on the shortlist. This meant that all the female swordsmen had obtained the opportunity to join Sword Palace. Night was approaching. The noble swordsmen and the civilian swordsmen who had passed the test called their friends to hold parties in different places. The civilian swordsmen had a drink at this time. Although they were drinking the cheapest bad wines and eating grilled pig legs, they also drank till all's blue. From the beginning, only very few civilian swordsmen had the confidence to enter the formal admission list. In their hearts, entering the shortlist was already their best luck. After all, compared to the people from noble families, these civilian swordsmen didn't have too many chances to acquire resources and education. That was too difficult for them. Beside a campfire in the countryside, a group of civilian swordsmen were drinking and boasting. "Hey, Li, you were really impressive. You have entered the top 32. You were only one step away from becoming one of the top 16. Everyone was around a second-ranked swordsman. He was a civilian swordsman, but his name had been fortunately written on the shortlist just like the several childs. Haha, I was too lucky. These childs had all been defeated by these little girls. It was really an eye-opening experience. Yes, they were too strong. I have never seen any female swordsman stronger than them. I think there must be some trick. I know Xiao Chao and had once had a battle with her. She spent 1 hour to defeat me at that time. They were really drunk." Many people started to shout at each other with the smell of alcohol on their breaths. After all, the result of the Sword Palace's entrance test was beyond everyone's expectation. No one had expected that these female swordsmen would acquire such an impressive success. At the same time, the people from noble families were also talking about this in the restaurant. They were eating peacock meat, medium-done snow beef, and drinking aged wines. The price of a bottle of the aged wine they were drinking was enough to let the civilian swordsmen hold their dinner party for a whole month. "Brother Yun family will count on you from now on. Yes. Your brother is really good for nothing. After losing Crane Wing's twin swords, his ambition has been burned to the ground. What the hell is that kind of attitude?" Everyone was proposing a toast to Yun He family's second young master. He was also one of the top 3 stone soldiers who tortured Yun Shi dozens of times in the first district of the Stars trial. In all fairness, his power was indeed decent. He was only slightly inferior to Child San Quan, Child Si Nian, and Child Yun He. He was also one of the few noble swordsmen who had defeated their female opponents. His name did deserve to be added in the formal admission list. In the Sword Palace's entrance test, the 3 childs had all been defeated by the mysterious black-haired maid. In that case, the second young master's performance was indeed excellent if compared to other candidates from noble families. Of course, at the end, Hua Yu defeated him. However, Hua Yu was an excellent aristocratic miss that could awaken her white gold rose bloodline in front of everyone. It wasn't a shame to be defeated by her. They were drinking and talking. Gradually, they began to discuss these female swordsmen. What the hell had happened to them? How could they be so strong? Hua Yu is an exception. She does have a natural talent for sword skills. However, what was wrong with other girls? They are simply some village girls. Can you believe it? I lost to my sister. That was unbelievable. In the practices before we came here, I could defeat her with one hand only. Yes. I know some of those noble girls. I'm very sure that none of them are super geniuses except Hua Yu. They were all drunk, and now, they were all posing questions to their friends and each other. It looked like no matter whether they were rich or poor, everyone was curious about this. Soon afterwards, a rumor started to spread amongst these people. I heard that they had obtained some treasures that could bring good luck. Can that legend be true? Yes, I saw them receiving the mysterious black-haired maid's black hair. What? That legend is true. The maid's black hair could really bring good luck. Achoo! After returning to his room and taking off the maid's black uniform, Yunshi suddenly felt a cold chill flowing through his back. Chapter 95, Profess My Love, I'm Back. Yunshi gazed at his own face in the mirror and hypnotized himself that nothing had changed. He was still himself, not the great sword maid Mei. Well, if he could ignore his flawless skin, black and smooth black hair, and deep eyes, which were so unfamiliar even to himself, nothing changed. Okay, Yunshi couldn't keep cheating himself anymore. The truth was, after obtaining the Killing Princess's legacy, all of him had been transformed. That was a change that happened to his Animacy hierarchy, and this was just the beginning. The Great Sword Maid's legacy was more powerful than Yunshi's imagination. It had already started to change his bloodline. Master, isn't it good to become stronger? Maya was glad to see Yunshi's change. The stronger her master was, the higher the possibility that he could escape from his ex-girlfriend's deadly chase. His body of flesh and blood was just like a small container. If he wanted to use his true Starchild power, he needed to strengthen his soul to a higher rank. However, if there was a way to make the small container more perfect, that would also be good. You don't understand. If this goes on, I'm afraid that something very bad will happen to me, Yunshi smiled bitterly as he gazed at his image. A week ago, he was still an ordinary baker. But now, he had to escape from his 4 godlike ex-girlfriends. Who else could understand his feeling? They sent a legend-ranked apostle to White Lotus Sword Domain to search for him. Any person who was at the legend rank was strong enough to destroy a whole sword domain. As far as Yunshi knew, the whole White Lotus Sword Domain didn't have any swordsman who was at this rank. The strongest people Yunshi had seen were the twin witches, White Lotus and Red Lotus. They were at the hero rank and their power was already beyond a mortal's imagination. He couldn't imagine how powerful a legend-ranked apostle would be. After tonight, he would wear the maid's black uniform again and went to Sword Palace together with Hua Hua. He must hide his identity and even his gender. In order to escape from his ex-girlfriend's hunting, he must become stronger and stronger in the stars trial by dying endless times. Tonight was the last night he would stay in this ordinary town where he had been born and lived for 14 years. His past dream would be buried after tonight. He wanted to inherit the baker's shop and marry one of the town girls. He would have many children, and after he was old, he would tell them that when he was young, he had had a brilliant childhood sweetheart. He would remember how they met each other, growing up together, and finally separated from each other. In the spring, they would go and see the blossoming of flowers and gather tender leaves in the plains near town. They would make a flower basket and take a walk with holding the flower basket in their arms together. In summer, they would take the fishing net to the stream to catch fish and prawns. They would smile and play together. In autumn, they would go to a secluded valley. He would tell her the story about his brilliant childhood sweetheart under the tree. In winter, they would sit side by the heater, eating oranges together and discussing the development plan of their baker's shop. After that, they would have 3 children. He hoped that there would be 1 girl and 2 boys. He would watch them grow up, and have their own lovers and lives. Finally, one autumn, his life would end. He would close his eyes with his family members circling around his bed. That would be a very ordinary life, but that was what Yunshi hoped. Hua Hua was his first lover and his favorite girl. However, he knew she wouldn't stay in town. She was like the fireworks in summer, shining between heaven and earth, but would finally disappear in the sky, and disappear from his life. Yunshi didn't dare to have any extravagant hope that they could stay together forever. She was the sun, a bright light that could light up the universe. She was the sky, free and boundless. In his eyes, Hua Hua was so bright and so resplendent. Even when Hua Hua displayed her flying swallow sword, her talent was already far beyond his and made him feel it was unreachable, not to mention that she had displayed her sky-flying sword and slayed the dragon with one attack. Hua Hua, do you know how good you are? Yunshi stood in front of the mirror. He whispered, as if he was saying goodbye to his past. You're as bright as the summer. You're my sun. I want to touch you, but worry about your scorching light. You're so glamorous, so beautiful, and so tempting. I never thought that I could stay beside you in the future. I love you, Hua Hua. I like the way you run, the gesture when you brandish your sword, and your face when you sweat. Hua Hua, if I live for only 18 years, then the 10 years I stayed with you will be the greatest treasure of my life. Yunshi didn't, and wasn't able to realize that outside of his window, Hua Hua was standing on a transparent light ring, gazing at him with an unbelievable look. Gee. Hua Hua's face was as red as a mellow apple. At first, she didn't trust her childhood sweetheart and planned to eavesdrop on his farewell to other girls, but now, she heard his biggest secret, which she shouldn't have heard but couldn't stop herself from hearing. So, her little she also liked her so much. Yes, that was right and reasonable. After all, she was his childhood sweetheart and would be his fiancée. He of course also liked her. However, the smile on the corner of her mouth exposed the exultation in her heart. Yunshi was professing his love to her. Her little she, her unique childhood sweetheart, her most favorite person in the world, was professing his love to her. She won. Ha ha ha, as she expected, childhood sweetheart was the strongest winner. After all, she was the first. No one could catch up with her. Ha ha ha. That is great. Today is Hua Hua's victory day. Hua Hua boldly laughed. She couldn't restrain her blood from boiling. Therefore, she stepped on one transparent light ring after another, dashing into the sky. A great amount of vigor was flowing in her body, making her heart beat faster with her face blushing. She couldn't control her passion and had to fly into the sky to unleash her powerful vigor. Today was her happiest day in her life. Little she, I love you, too. I like the shyness on your face, and the butter bread you specially made for me. You know nothing about my past and the responsibility my bloodline that is a burden. You don't know how special I am. However, you still like me. You like the purest part of me, the true me. Hence, I also like the pure you, my little she. No matter whether 1,000 years pass, or 10,000 years pass, a promise is always a promise. It will never be changed. The promise of marrying you will never expire. Chapter 96, The Childhood Sweethearts. 1. Yunshi opened the window and saw a starry sky. Tonight, the great stars were still shining in the sky. In the bamboo house not far away from Yunshi's house, people from the noble families were drinking and talking, making the originally quiet small town become noisy. It's midnight, 12 o'clock, Yunshi confirmed the time, then left his room. Tonight, he had dates with 3 girls. At 1 o'clock in the morning, he would go to see Phyllis, the eldest daughter of the gem store in the neighboring town. At 2 o'clock in the morning, he would go to see Miley, the young lady from the flower shop down the street. At 3 o'clock, he would go to see Yili, the little girl from the cake shop across the street. Phyllis was the eldest girl. She was 1 year older than Yunshi and often let Yunshi feel that she was like his elder sister. Miley just moved into the small town a few years ago. She was a little younger than Yunshi. Yili was a little girl Yunshi often took care of since his childhood. In every sense, she was the cutest girl. Originally, Yunshi had planned to marry one of the 3 girls after Hua Hua left the town. Hua Hua was a genius and she wouldn't stay in such a small town. In Yunshi's heart, he would propose to one of the 3 girls and spend his life with her. Of course, this was just his past plan. Apart from the eldest girl, Phyllis, who maintained a relationship of, we are friends, not 2 lovers, with him, the other 2 girls, Miley and Yili were just 2 girls who were close to him. Well, at least, Yunshi thought that way. Tomorrow, he would leave the town. He would go to the White Lotus Sword Domain Sword Tip District, starting a brand new life. Tonight was the last night he would stay in the town. Maybe he would come back someday, but he knew he was unable to achieve his dream of spending his life in the town till his death in his bed. He wanted to bid farewell to the town. Therefore, he asked the 3 girls out to say goodbye to them in different times in different places. At 1 o'clock in the morning and beside the stream. Sorry, I'm late. A silver-haired girl in a straw hat ran to Yunshi. She was puffed with a guilty look. Her eyes were as clear as pure white, her silver hair was hanging down on her shoulders, her white strap dress was dotted with little rubies, her 2 small dimples were ineffably cute. She was one of Yunshi's childhood sweethearts, Phyllis. Her ancestors had moved their residence from Western God's Domain to White Lotus Sword Domain just like Hua Hua and Hua Yu's families had. Even in Western God's Domain, her silver hair was also proof of a kind of rare noble bloodline. As the eldest girl of Yunshi's childhood sweethearts, her skin was as crystal as white jade in the moonlight. She had a slender body and a delicate face. Her eyes were so glamorous. It was said that in the neighboring town, the number of young men who had asked her to marry them were enough to circle around the town for 10 rounds. Never mind, Feely, Yunshi smiled and called her nickname. This was their secret, and only Yunshi could call her that nickname. Yunshi, it is so late, what's the thing you have to tell me so late at night? Phyllis gazed at Yunshi with hope in her eyes which made Yunshi find it so difficult to tell her the news. Well, in fact, I will leave this town for a period of time. Yunshi didn't dare to look at Phyllis's eyes. Amongst the 3 girls, she was the most outstanding girl and was of a similar age to him. The most important thing was, she seemed to have a vague favorable impression of him. I see. You will go to Sword Palace together with Hua Hua, right? Unexpectedly, Phyllis had already known the news. That was strange. How could she know? He was using the identity as Great Sword Maid to take part in the Sword Palace's entrance test. Hua Hua will go to Sword Palace, but she won't just leave you here. I had already understood this from a long time ago. Phyllis bravely raised her head with a sad look. Her expression looked like she was going to cry at any time. No, in fact, Yunshi couldn't tell her the truth. How could he tell her that he would go to Sword Palace as a maid? Finally, you chose Hua Hua. Phyllis pinched the bottom of her dress with her 2 hands. She looked as if she was enduring something. No, not I chose Hua Hua, but Hua Hua chose me, Yunshi surrendered. He couldn't just see her that expression and do nothing, so he told her the truth. Well, is that true? So, I still have chance. Phyllis's eyes suddenly brightened up with excitement. Yunshi chose Hua Hua and Hua Hua chose Yunshi were 2 different things. They had completely different meanings. If it was the former, she would have no chance. If it was the latter, there was still hope, even if it was just a negligible possibility. She would never admit defeat till the last moment. She would never give up till the last second. As the proverb said, she who laughs last laughs best. She hadn't been defeated. Hua Hua gained an advantage, but the battle hadn't ended yet. At least, she hadn't had any leverage. Feely, Yunshi found that he couldn't understand what she was thinking. Her expression looked strange. From tomorrow on, they would have no chance to meet each other. Thinking of that, Yunshi's heart was full of sadness. However, at least, he could do the last thing for her and the others. This was the only thing he could do for them before he left the small town. Mayor, prepare the seed, Yunshi spoke to his star elf in his mind, then started to use his special ability. This was the only and unique spiritual ability he had after he obtained the Starchild's love system. He wanted to give her his seed. Detect the target. Wonderful adaptability. Start to link the target. As Yunshi had expected, since Hua Yu and Xiao Chao could have excellent adaptability with him, then as his childhood sweetheart, Phyllis shouldn't be an exception. Yunshi's seed entered Phyllis's body without any difficulty. However, Yunshi suddenly found something strange in her body. It looked like a mist-like thing that was protecting a part of her body. Yunshi was puzzled. However, at this time, Phyllis stood on her toes and softly kissed his mouth. Chapter 97, The Childhood Sweethearts, 2. Phyllis's kiss was more serious than at any time before. It wasn't a game. It was a declaration. Even though she knew that her rival was Hua Hua, she wouldn't give up. She was Yunshi's most intimate person other than Hua Hua. She was about the same age as Hua Hua and had a more matured mind. Her appearance and temperament were also not inferior to Hua Hua. However, as a girl of the nobility, she didn't even have any betrothal with anyone. That was a pretty strange thing, especially in White Lotus Sword domain. As far as Yunshi knew, the suitors she had refused were 10 times more than the people Hua Hua had refused. Yunshi, remember, don't give up. I will find some way to help you. Phyllis held Yunshi's both hands tightly. She really didn't want to let him go. Finally, as Yunshi gazed at her with amazement, she ground her teeth, then determinedly turned around and ran away. Ah! Gee! What did she mean? Has she known something? Yunshi stood beside the stream like a woodpile. He was confused and didn't know what had happened. After leaving Yunshi's sight, Phyllis had a long walk. Finally, she stopped with an apathetic look. At the same time, her temperament suddenly changed. That was absolutely not some temperament that a daughter of Gem Store could have. Paw! 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 One ruby after another dropped down from her dress and fell on the ground, turning into ashes. Curse you! Why did I fail? Hua Hua, you're really my enemy. Sky-flying bloodline. Is that the reason that you can have everything wonderful in the world? I'm the person who loves Yunshi the best. Phyllis showed undisguised hostility. She slightly showed her another face at this time. Calm down, my little girl. You shouldn't privately order black obsidian to assassinate Hua Hua. You knew that she was no match for Hua Hua. An old voice suddenly came from the shadow behind Elphilis. Then what should I do? She is going to take Yunshi away. Only Yunshi, only he. I don't want to let him go. Elphilis bit her handkerchief, looking like she was going to break out into weeping. At first, it was just a simple mission. She only needed to watch Hua Hua. The sky-flying bloodline legacy had a bearing on many people's lives. However, as the aristocratic Miss of 10 Leaves Alliance, the first time she used her privilege wasn't for the bloodline but for an irrelevant ordinary boy. Sigh. I will keep this a secret from the Alliance, but you should give up on that boy as soon as possible. After all, he is just an ordinary person and you have the missed bloodline. He can't hold a candle to you. No. I don't want it. This is the first time in my life that I'm so eager for something. Even though my rival is Hua Hua, I won't give up. Even though he is just an ordinary person, I want him to be my thing. Don't persuade me. Let's go back to Western God's domain and hold the great ritual of missed bloodline. Elphilis's eyes were so firm. She had made the decision, and no one could stop her. Sigh. Finally, the old figure in the shadow sighed. If at that time Yunshi had agreed to marry Elphilis, that would be the best solution and nothing would happen after, the old figure thought in his heart. As the first successor of the First Leaf of 10 Leaves Alliance and the owner of Mist Bloodline, Elphilis was so weak at dealing with her love. Perhaps this would become Elphilis's greatest regret in her life. At 2 o'clock in the morning and on the meadow beside the town. You're late, brother. Meilei opened her mischievous eyes wide, seeing Yunshi running to her in a hurry. She was a 12-year-old girl. She had golden hair and a pair of purple eyes. Her soft lips were as red as rubies, striking and eye-catching. Her smooth golden hair fell on her slender shoulders like a waterfall, making her look like a princess from a fairy tale. Yunshi remembered that her name, Meilei, was also a goddess's name in Western mythology, and Meilei herself was as graceful as her name, having a princess-like temperament. Sorry, something happened. Yunshi was still confused about the last words had Elphilis said to him. After all, he had once considered her as his fiancé candidate. If he hadn't awakened his ability as the Star Child, after Hua Hua left town he would probably have married her when he was 18 years old. Let me guess. You went to see Elphilis, didn't you? Look, these are her jewel powders, let me help you get them off of your clothes. She always uses them to make a mark. If Hua Hua sees them, she will be angry. Meilei's expression of, I have seen through everything, made Yunshi feel pretty embarrassed. She was really a naughty girl, but she was also a considerate girl. This was her advantage and glamour. It was really fun to stay with Meilei. She never lacked patience to listen your troubles and comfort you with a smile. Yunshi often had a dissonant feeling that she didn't look like a 12-year-old girl but was more matured. Well, in fact. I'm going to, Yunshi said haltingly. However, before he finished his words, Meilei shrugged her shoulders and said what he was going to say, you will leave town with Hua Hua. Am I right? Why did you know it? Yunshi was dumbfounded. Why had Meilei and Elphilis both known about it? Haha, don't look at me like that. It isn't a surprise to guess that Hua Hua won't just leave you here. Meilei climbed up the tree branch and gazed at the western horizon. In fact, I will also leave here. All these years, I've been really happy to have you staying with me. It's so fantastic and wonderful, just like a sweet dream. However, no fond dream doesn't have an end, and my dream is going to finish. For the last time, can I call you brother again? This is my last hope as your childhood sweetheart. Of course, Meilei, Yunshi was touched. His childhood sweetheart was still so considerate. Well, brother. Miley jumped down from the tree with a sweet and naughty smile. Ah, so this was your plan. Yunshi softly hugged Miley's slender body in his arms. For the first time, Miley behaved so willful. The girl in his arms was so light. Yunshi could barely feel her weight. This really is a nice dream, Miley whispered and leaned her head on Yunshi's chest. Chapter 97, The Childhood Sweethearts. 3. Brother. Yunshi held Miley in his arms, treating her like a princess. Miley leaned her forehead against Yunshi's chest and emitted a sweet groan. Pang! 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 Looking at Miley, Yunshi couldn't stop his heart from pounding. Why did Phyllis and Miley both look different today, but also cuter than usual? They were hinting something at him. Miley. Yunshi opened his mouth and tried to say something, however, Miley's lips made him swallow his words. Ah. Miley emitted a cute sound. Her face blushed like a red apple. This wasn't a playful kiss. It was more meaningful. Miley said nothing, but Yunshi had understood her pure purpose. I really want to have this dream forever, brother. My brother Yunshi. Miley showed a lonely look on her face, then left Yunshi's arms with sadness. For the first time in my life, I fell in love with someone, and at the same time, I met my lifelong friend. The two joys overlapped together, and the double joy brought me more and more joy. I really had a fantastic, happy time. However, why does every sweet dream have to end? This dream was really too fantastic. Yunshi stroked his lips. This was his second kiss this night. Why had his childhood sweetheart suddenly become so proactive? Was it because of Hua? Sorry. I disappointed you, brother. But sometimes, your thoughtful Miley also has her own problems. Miley gazed at Yunshi's confused face, then smiled lightly. Since it's a dream, then. I don't want to let this sweet dream have an end. For the first time since I was born, I want to keep something and have something. Even though that means that I have to fight against the strongest person who is loved by the world. Brother, I have made a decision. Decision. The strongest person who is loved by the world. Miley, what were you saying? Yunshi didn't understand. He shook his head and stopped thinking, then reached out his hand and stroked Miley's hair. He began to make a seed for Miley. Detect the target. High adaptability is detected. Start the link. Since they were doomed to leave each other's life, then the last thing he could do for them was to share his seed with them. In that case, maybe they still had a chance to meet each other someday. However, things went just as they had when Yunshi put the seed into Phyllis's body. He felt something strange in Miley's body. It was a golden light, very warm and bright. After his seed entered Miley's body, it was immediately covered by the warm golden light and passed a very comfortable feeling to Yunshi through the link. Miley groaned. She looked around in confusion, then moved her eyes to Yunshi. Could it be? Did she find something? The warm golden light seemed to like his seed, which he made by using his star power. It had completely absorbed his seed. Brother, I'm going to leave. But don't worry, we will meet each other again soon after, and I will let you feel surprised at that time. Miley gently raised the corner of her dress, making an old etiquette, then kissed Yunshi's hand. I believe you will become the most beautiful Princess Miley at that time. Yunshi blushed for his childhood sweetheart, the fragrant Miley. Countless flowers were blossoming on the ground. Countless golden sunflowers were emitting splendid golden lights to the floating golden palaces in the sky. Every golden petal was singing. They were praising the return of the great princess. They were eulogizing the great history of the Golden family. In the sky, one solar prism after another were refracting bright sunshine on the floating old palaces, to remind all the members of the Golden family of thing, their great princess had just returned. She had just opened her eyes from her deep dream. Due to her return, the world had the sun's blessing again. In an old, golden palace, a girl was sleeping in a crystal coffin and was covered by golden petals. Now, she slowly opened her eyes. Her skin was as white as snow, her eyes were as clear as crystal, and her pupils were as blue as the sea. For she had slept for such a long time, her golden hair had grown up to her ankles. Princess Miley, our princess awakes. Praise the sun. Praise the stars. Praise the gold. Praise our great, holy Princess Miley. Rhine's princess. The golden princess. On her finger, there was a golden ring. It was the artifact which was symbolic of the Golden family's highest belief. It was a mission that only the Rhine bloodline could start and finish. At the same time, it was also a curse which had been handed down from age to age in the Golden family. It was said that the ring's master was doomed to rule the world, but would also taste the greatest tragedy in the world. Only the girl who had the most pure and holy Rhine bloodline could break away from this curse and bring the greatest honor for the family. The Rhine princess, the child of the Golden family, was a child of God who was doomed to rule the world. However, after returning from the reality from her dream, the child of God was full of loss and sorrow in her heart. The dream finally comes to its end. The reality is still so boring. Day in and day out, nothing has changed. She sighed. Phyllis should have returned to 10 Leaves Alliance. Therefore, our battle is just beginning. Hua Hua, you won't be the last winner. In the name of the Holy Golden Ring, I swear I will fulfill my oath. She raised her head with steadiness in her eyes. I will be your enemy. On the hill in the west of the small town, Yunshi finally saw his last childhood sweetheart. No, that wasn't very accurate. The girl was too young. He could barely call her childhood sweetheart. From 1 year old to 9 years old, from beginning to learn how to walk to playing his daughter in the game Playhouse, Yunshi had witnessed her life. She was Yili, 10 years old this year and was the most popular girl, and all the townspeople's treasure. Papa. The cute girl held her little bear doll in her arms and smiled sweetly at Yunshi. Chapter 98. Yili's allure. Yili was the cutest and most popular girl in the small town. Tonight, she wore white Western-style clothes with hem laces and 2 carefully combed beautiful golden long pigtails on her head. In addition to this, she also wore a red bow knot hairband on her head, which was presented to her by Yunshi in the past. Now, she was holding a teddy bear in her arms. Her temperament was as elegant as a little princess, and her appearance was like a beautiful fallen angel. If she stood inside a shop front window, no one would know she was not a delicate doll. Her legs were slim, and her white stockings were silhouetted against her snow-white skin. After she realized Yunshi's gazing, her face burned with embarrassment. Her skin was as smooth as silk fabric and as tender as baby's skin. Her chest was still undeveloped and flat like a scrub board, couldn't even be compared to a pair of poached eggs. Papa. In the past, Yili always acted as Yunshi's daughter in the game Playing House. She had gotten used to calling Yunshi that. However, Yunshi had grown up. He felt pretty embarrassed to hear that name. Yili, you've grown up, Yunshi said with emotion and stroked her smooth, gold pigtails. In his memory, she was still the little girl who always ran after him whilst holding her little teddy bear in her arms. Now, she had gradually become a cute girl. Although she was only 9 years old, no one would doubt she would become a wonderful lady in the future. Papa, hug me. Yili raised her little teddy bear. acting like a spoiled child. Yunshi had watched her grow up from childhood. He naturally hugged Yili in his arms and patted her back. Yili's smell was as sweet as cream. She was like a gentle kitten, acting very cute and docile in Yunshi's arms. Yili, I'm going to leave this town. Yunshi gazed at Yili's big eyes and lightly told her the news. Together with Huahua, Papa. Why? Why did everyone know this? Had somebody posted it on every board in the world? Yunshi complained in his heart. He had to accept the truth that every one of his childhood sweethearts had known that he would go to Sword Palace with Huahua. Well, yes. We will leave town together. It will be for a very long time. Yili, will you feel lonely? Amongst all his childhood sweethearts, Yili was the person Yunshi cherished most. Compared to Miley and Elphyllis, Yili was too young. She would be very sad to hear he had to leave. As the youngest playmate, Yili was very dependent on him. Therefore, Yunshi purposely chose her as the last person to tell her he was leaving. He had prepared to comfort her the whole night. Papa, I'm not good enough for you. Is Huahua really that good? As Yunshi had expected, Yili pouted. Her expression looked as if she had been robbed her most beloved treasure. No. Yili is my most favorite girl. However, this isn't something I can make a decision about. Yunshi sighed. In his past plan, he had once thought to wait for Yili for another 9 years and then marry her after that. He had spent his childhood with Yili. During that time, he unconsciously started to like her. He was very sure that 9 years later, she would become a glamorous beauty. However, there was no more time for him to see her grow. He was going to leave, and a few years later, Yili would be married to someone else. As Yunshi thought of that, he suddenly had a heartache. No. Papa is Yili's papa. I won't give you to anybody. Yili was angry. She severely bit on Yunshi's lips. Where did everyone learn it? Yunshi didn't want to make her cry, so he had to reluctantly accept her kiss. Her lips were as soft as 2 petals, giving him a totally different feeling from Miley's kiss and Elphyllis's kiss. Her mouth was soft and small, only about half the size of Yunshi's mouth. In that case, Yunshi's mouth could easily cover her mouth. Her cute, small tongue was tender and smooth. She contracted her pupils, her breath rasping in her heaving chest. They had a soul kiss, which was totally inappropriate for Yili's age. Yunshi saw Yili's face burning with embarrassment, then he realized that he unintentionally used the kissing skill he learned from Mayer. Papa's smell, comfortable, Yili had almost lost her consciousness. She leaned on Yunshi's chest with her heart pounding heavily. Yunshi lowered his head and gazed at Yili. Today, she seemed to be more beautiful than usual. Her delicate face made her look like an exquisite doll. On her young face, her eyes were as deep as the sea, but also as clear as a pair of crystals. However, that didn't hide the grief in her heart. She wore a pair of white silk stockings on her slender legs, which were partly hidden and partly visible under the lower part of her princess dress. Accidentally, a gust of wind raised her dress and coincidentally exposed her white underwear. Her skin smelled like delicious cream, continuously luring Yunshi to commit a crime. Yili was like a cute angel today, showing Yunshi her most innocent and cute side without reservation. Her cute, young face was gazing at Yunshi with pain, supplication and lure. After that, Yili gave Yunshi her second kiss. With tears in her eyes, she moved her face close to Yunshi. Her small tongue slowly opened Yunshi's mouth with sweet milky aroma. Yunshi felt that her tongue was as nimble as a naughty kitten. Uncontrollably and impulsively, he responded to her enthusiasm. Papa, choose Yili, please. I'm willing to do that very comfortable thing with Papa. At this moment, Yili was an angel, but also a demon. She was luring Yunxi to tread his foot onto a forbidden path. Yunxi suddenly realized that amongst all his childhood sweethearts, Yili was the most dangerous one. Because she was still a child, she hadn't learned the moral rules. Because she was too innocent, she could easily do things which his other childhood sweethearts wouldn't do. Yili was like a naughty succubus, luring him to descend into hell. Yunxi believed that any virtuous people would be hard-pressed to refuse her temptation. No. We can't. Where did you learn this? Fortunately, Yunxi pulled himself back before he really descended into hell. His Yili was his little princess and his little princess couldn't be so arrow. Well, I learned it from a book named The Shameless Demon and His 1,000 Daughters. The book told me that the most blissful thing to be a daughter is to do that very comfortable thing with her father. Yili opened her eyes wide, gazing at Yunxi with innocence. You're tuning in to the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.